also, I think, in the other room and out in the foyer if we need it. Tonight's meeting, Tuesday, May 23rd, 2017. Roll call, please.
Trustee Karianis.
Here.
Trustee Bueller.
Present.
Trustee Cecil.
Here.
Trustee Israel.
Here.
Trustee Collison.
Here.
Trustee Hahn.
Here.
President Kroom.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have minutes from May 9th, 2017. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Trustee Karianis.
Yes.
Trustee Bueller.
Aye.
Trustee Cecil.
Yes.
Trustee Israel.
Yes.
Trustee Collison.
Yes.
Trustee Hahn.
Aye.
President Kroom.
Yes, motion passes. Here from the audience. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience to speak on an item that is not currently on the agenda. So if you're here for minimum wage, that's on the agenda. This is not your opportunity. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on an item? Okay, thank you. Warrant list, Trustee Cecil.
President Froome, I've reviewed the warrant list, and I move for the approval of Class A and B warrants totaling $3,959,096.43.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Trustee Karianis.
Yes.
Trustee Bueller.
Aye.
Trustee Cecil.
Aye.
Trustee Israel.
Yes.
Trustee Collison.
Yes.
Trustee Hahn.
Aye.
President Kroom.
Yes, motion passes.
President Froome, I move for the approval of the Class A frontage deposit refunds totaling $2,600.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Trustee
Yes.
Karianis. Trustee Bueller.
Aye.
Trustee Cecil.
Aye.
Trustee Israel.
Yes.
Trustee Collison.
Yes.
Trustee Hahn.
Aye.
President Kroom.
Yes, motion passes. Anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay, I forgot the manager's report, but he informs me that he doesn't have anything. So, President's report. The first item is a recognition of Sergeant James Mayall for his 30 years of service. He is not here, but I would like to approve his resolution. It's number 17.
53.
53.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Tina, you here? Can you come up, please? This is resolution number 1754. Is there a motion to approve?
moved.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is approved. Telecommunication, Tina Fisher joined the Northbrook Police Department on January 2nd, 1990, with her approximately 8.5 years prior public safety, dispatching, and police-related experience. During her tenure, Tina has been a LEADS, Law Enforcement Agency Data System operator, and a member of the Y2K Preparedness Contingency Team. Tina also served on an advisory committee for the purpose of selecting a new chief of police in 1999 and has served as acting communications supervisor on numerous occasions. Early in her career, prior to Northbrook having a public information officer, Tina's duties included the handling of media inquiries. Throughout the years, Tina became astute in searching latitude and longitude values in attempts to determine the location of abandoned 911 calls that were deemed suspicious. One such example involved acting on intuition by calling back a distressed female on an abandoned 911 call where the family related that no further assistance was needed. Tina decided to dispatch an officer to the home for a well-being check. Upon arrival, the officer requested to have counseling services respond to the scene, where it was determined that the adult female was experiencing postpartum psychosis and required hospitalization for emergency psychiatric treatment. Another commendable and noteworthy case involved a suspected bank robber known as the Bearded Bank Robber, where communications personnel and crime analysis pierced together a hot sheet of stolen cars from the area that the robber operated in and resulted in the identification and arrest of the Bearded Bank Robber. Throughout the years, Tina has also demonstrated her ability to troubleshoot equipment problems and failures. The Communications Center is a 24/7 unit, and even small equipment problems can be vital to officer safety and radio communications. Tina progressed through learning the Communications Center consoles radios, and punch card data collection system, which evolved into the new technology of a computer-aided dispatch system. Even in the sometimes frantic and stressful atmosphere of the Communications Center, Tina never lost her desire to help people or her work ethic of treating every situation or call as if it was the most important. This desire is documented in Tina's personal file, which contains numerous thank you notes from the citizens she has helped throughout her career. Now, therefore, be it resolved, on behalf of the Northbrook community, sincere thanks and appreciation are expressed to Tina Fisher for the 27 years that she faithfully served this village. Congratulations and thank you, Tina, for your sincere dedication to your profession and to the safety and welfare of the public you served. Thank you. Communications, and she says no, but thank you, you'll be missed. Okay, we have a slew of commission and committee appointments. Arts Commission, Alan Alvarez, Sheila Day, and Rob Sills. Board of Fire and Police, George Metzger. Community Relations Commission, Bruce Dowdy, Elliot Bruckman, Jonathan Carroll. Environmental Quality Commission, Scott Robeson, John Elbert. Industrial and Commercial Development Commission, Stephen Lewis, Jennifer Lawrence. Board of Local Improvements, Sandra Froome, Bob Israel. Senior Housing Commission, Fred Rosenberg, Joan Malin, and Jolene Moore. Youth Commission, Jody Donnelly and Jennifer Saperstein. Zoning Board of Appeals, Paul Schoenfeld and Howard Wolfmark. And these are the board committees. Planning and Zoning, Jim Carrianis, Chair, A.C. Bueller, Catherine Ciesla. Public Safety Committee, A.C. Bueller, Chair, Jim Carrianis and Muriel Collison. Administration and Finance Committee, Catherine Ciesla, Chair, Jim Carrianis, Bob Israel. Public Works Committee, Bob Israel, Chair, A.C. Bueller, Jason Hahn. Communications and Legislation Committee, Muriel Collison, Catherine Ciesla, and Jason Hahn. And Community and Sustainability Committee, Jason Hahn is Chair, Bob Israel, and Muriel Collison. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second has been made. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. A couple of comments. I wanted to welcome Pongo, our new dog, the newest member of our police department.
Where is he? After you approve him on tonight's agenda.
That's what we approve him on tonight's agenda,
Oh,
but
is
we
that
have a
it?
picture of him.
Yeah.
And I wanted to thank staff and everyone involved in Student Government Day and tell you that there's a video online of the whole evening. And if you have not seen Muriel Collison's performance as a rap artist, you should definitely watch it. So with that, let's move on to the consent agenda. And these are items that that appear to have the unanimous support of the Board of Trustees. The board, anyone on the board or the audience can remove an item, and anyone on the board can add an item. I believe there's one item we would like to remove.
Yes. President Froome, I'd like to remove the resolution approving the subdivision and development agreement with the Jacobs Companies, which is item J.
Item J
Yeah.
and K
K, yeah.
and L. And those three will be placed under the Planning and Zoning Committee.
And then I would ask the board's indulgence to take the first item on planning and zoning, which is a review and resolution to approve the transfer of a special permit for a gymnastics facility located at 1845 Raymond Drive. I'd like to move that to consent with the consent of the board.
I would second that.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to do all of that. Anything else? Is there, yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Resolution number 17. 55, I already forgot. Authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with Northbrook Park District for the installation of IT equipment, 1756. Authorizing the purchase of upgraded servers, 1757. Authorizing professional services for Microsoft, Infrastructure redesign, 1758, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Northbrook Park District for the Keystone Chartreuse Project. Resolution 1759, authorizing a change order number 1 with V3 Companies of Woodridge for consultant services. 1760, authorizing a contract with Copenhagen Construction for the construction of the Dundee Road, Skokie Boulevard, and Sunset Lane stormwater projects. 1761, authorizing an agreement with the Cintas Corporation for the rental of uniforms for the Northbrook Public Works Department. 1762, approving an agreement with On-Time Embroidery for uniforms for the Northbrook Fire Department. 1763, authorizing the purchase of replacement K-9, that's Pongo.
Pongo.
And then, resolution number 1764, authorizing the transfer of ownership and operation of a gymnastics training center. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion, any second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Trustee Kirianis?
Yes.
Trustee Bueller?
Aye.
Trustee Sisla?
Aye.
Trustee Israel?
Aye.
Trustee Collison?
Yes.
Trustee Hahn?
Aye.
President Fromm?
Yes, motion passes. Okay, planning and zoning. Let's put the Jacobs piece first. Trustee Kirianis.
Okay, I was just going to ask, I'd like to do that, too. The reason I asked this to come off is because there's been a letter that was sent to by Jacobs to us about some of the concerns that were expressed by some of the Plan Commission, which I happen to agree with. Those concerns covered the, I don't know how to describe it, the top section, roof section above the main facade, and that be of a material that would better coordinate with the facade structure itself. The letter that I saw from Jacobs addressed that, and I feel comfortable with what they're doing with that one. The second part is the biggest objection I have, and that was I didn't want to approve this with the current open space design. So with the permission of the board, I'd like to ask Jacobs to work with our staff to do something a lot more creative and a lot more attractive than the picture that was presented to us this evening for final approval. I just wanted to get that stake in the sand that says, hey, look, we're going to do something a lot nicer than that. I mean, that's an open space with a feature there that is just not suitable for what I think should go there. But I'm willing to approve it with the understanding you work together with our staff, and I'll have some input in it. The third item was regulation of outdoor grills. Initially, there wasn't anything regulating barbecuing, on the outside on balconies. Right. Thank you. And yet we all know, as do you, that you have to regulate that. You came back with an approval of small grills that have very small amounts of, I guess that's natural gas. Is that correct?
Is depicted on the landscape plan.
Electric. Or 1 pound. Okay, really. In other words, the BTU output is very, very limited. Yeah, anybody that owns a condo or that's ever tried to grill out on their balcony knows that you just can't simply go out there and fire it up. So again, with the letter of understanding that you've sent, so what I'm saying to you is I'm willing to approve these, and if my fellow board members concur with these understandings included in this agreement, then we could move on. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir. Steve.
I just want to make sure I understand this, Trustee Kirianis, because we are up for final approval.
I know. That's why I pulled it out.
Right, and we have a cooperative developer. I understand that and appreciate that, but want the board to understand that once you approve this agreement, it is final. And we have several documents before you, one of which is a subdivision agreement. We could put that understanding into the subdivision and development agreement. However, we can't change the site plan without it coming back through the process. If it's going to result in additional landscaping or additional open space, that can be accommodated through this.
Well, I for one would like to see. I'd like to see. It's up to the rest of the board. It's not just up to me. But the picture that they put in there was a single tree in a box. So in the middle of an open space. that's not appropriate.
Okay, so just let's get the vernacular straight. So additional open space may mean changing the
No.
site plan. That is not what you're talking about. Changing the landscape. So,
I would also, I personally, as one trustee, would like to see some kind of a, what do they call those things? A pergola or an outdoor gazebo or something where people can go in and sit down and it's landscaped around, that's all.
okay, so these are items that can be added to the final landscape plan, which is on Exhibit D to the subdivision agreement.
Okay.
It would not change, and this is important, it would not change the site plan, not add.
I'm not asking for additional open space, I'm not asking for footprint changes.
That's a good clarification. So let me ask the developer's attorney if they would have objection to adding language to the definition of final landscape plan, which would allow for additional landscape features acceptable to the, and we'll put it to the village manager, which is what we typically do. He will, of course, seek your ultimate approval, the village board, in the definition of final landscape plan.
Of course, that's acceptable.
Okay. Does anybody else have any input?
So
Okay.
you're now able to approve it tonight if you desire, with the additional change to the subdivision and development agreement definition of final landscape plan.
Can we take all three together?
You can take them all three as an omnibus.
Is that okay with everybody else? Yes. Okay, so I make the motion to take all three as an omnibus for approval.
Okay, there's a motion to approve resolution number 65, 66, and ordinance number 17.
Second.
19.
17, 19. These are all the approvals in relationship to Jacobs Gateway Townhomes, and there's been a motion and a second. Any further questions? Roll call, please.
Trustee Karianis.
Yes.
Trustee Bueller.
Aye.
Trustee Ciesla.
Aye.
Trustee Israel.
Yes.
Trustee Collison.
Yes.
Trustee Hahn.
Aye.
President Vroom.
Yes, motions pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We look forward to breaking ground. Okay, you're under C now.
Preliminary. Here we go. We're into the preliminary review section of planning and zoning, and the comments made by board members this evening are of a preliminary nature. Individual trustees will comment and do not represent the opinion or final determination of the Village of Northbrook. No final decision on the requested relief can or will be made until the matter goes through the village zoning process, which may include a public hearing and recommendations by the Northbrook Plan Commission. First item up is a preliminary review by PKPG Companies, an LLC, for approval of a 7-lot subdivision at 2420 to 2450 Landwehr Road. And we've seen this in various iterations, and I believe we're now down to 7 lots.
Correct.
Before it was an 8-lot subdivision.
Correct.
So, you want to take us through it real quick?
Correct. Yes. So the subject property consists of 2 parcels in the R1 single-family residential district. Each individual lot currently contains a single-family residential structure. The comprehensive plan designates the property as appropriate for single-family residential. It's roughly 3.5 acres. This is an image of the homes on the property today. As Trustee Karianis mentioned, we've seen this in the past. In 2014, it was proposed as a planned development with, I believe, 12 units. The board found that to be too dense as well as not finding a private road appropriate. In 2015, we were presented with a preliminary review of 8 lots, of which that applicant filed a formal application and then ultimately withdrew that. During that preliminary review, the board had stated to make sure there was adequate access for emergency vehicles. In 2016, the board was presented with a 7-lot preliminary review. During that preliminary review, the trustees had asked that the Plan Commission pay close attention to the stormwater design for the subdivision. That applicant at the time filed a formal application, which they also withdrew. So before the board this evening is a slightly redesigned 7-lot subdivision application. All of the lots meet the required lot width and lot area. The road meets the road standards for right-of-way, pavement, and a cul-de-sac. The change from this plan from the last preliminary review is that the proposed public road, the curve in the road has been reduced, and that was something that when the previous applicant had filed a formal application, the Public Works Department and Engineering had asked that they reduce the curvature into the road. So that's something that at preliminary review, this applicant has taken into consideration already. The applicant is proposing lots that will meet the R4 zoning district requirements in terms of lot area. And then the items to consider when reviewing the proposed 7-lot subdivision tentative plat request is if the design is, the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and then the appropriateness of a 7-lot subdivision, if there's any specific concerns with the overall design, density, layout, buffering around the perimeter, or site access.
Okay, I will kick this off. Overall, I don't see a problem with a 7-lot subdivision here. My concerns really amount to safety with respect to the circulation of, let's say, a fire truck in that cul-de-sac. I am concerned that all of the stormwater management be taken care of, and I would leave that to the engineering department to determine if these proposals by this developer will meet that criteria. I understand there are no other variations in terms of lot size, and I would be concerned, because I can't tell from this picture, about buffering with respect to the houses around it. So that would be a concern of mine, and I would ask the Plan Commission to take a look at that to see what would be appropriate. Those are my comments. A.C. Bueller?
Yeah, I agree with you. One quick question, though, I want to make sure, so we're talking about a dedicated street, standard width,
Correct.
right-of-way sidewalks.
Correct,
right?
all of the above.
Okay, I'm good.
Catherine?
And the question I would have for the Plan Commission is the adequacy of the parking. Other than that, I echo Trustee Karianis's comments.
Bob?
I echo my fellow trustees, just, note that buffering in the final plan is going to be necessary.
Muriel?
I have nothing additional to add.
Jason?
Echo everyone else's comments, and understand that the neighbors seem to support this development. And as for parking, there'll be at least a minimum of a 2-car garage and then 2 exterior parking spaces. And if the only difference between now and in the 2015 proposal is a slight difference in the curve of the driveway, then, or the entrance cul-de-sac drive, then, yeah, it seems fine.
Okay. President Friend?
Nothing further.
Okay, so it's on to the Plan Commission with that one, with a relatively rosy support from the trustees. Next item up is a preliminary review of a request to subdivide 1450 Grant Road into 2 lots. Would you take us through that one, because it was originally 2 lots, then it was consolidated into 1 lot, and now they want to go back to 2 lots. My question was, when it was originally 2 lots, they must have been non-conforming.
Yeah, so the subject property, 1450 Grant Road, currently as it exists is roughly 60,000 square foot property. The comprehensive plan designates the subject property as appropriate for a single-family large lot. And in the aerials here you can see it's an existing home with an attached garage as well as a detached garage on the northern portion of the subject property. Originally, this was 2 lots, 1442 and 1450 Grant. The house that you see here that exists today was constructed on 1442 Grant when it was 2 lots. So the house, when it was built on 1442 Grant alone, did receive a setback variation from the Zoning Board of Appeals to reduce the northern property interior setback from, I believe it was 12 feet to a little over 10 feet. And then in 2009, the applicant who owns 1442, the house that was constructed, acquired 1450 to the north and consolidated the 2 properties into 1, and they constructed the detached garage, which is located now north of the home. The applicant requested a preliminary review that underwent review by the Board of Trustees in 2015 to subdivide the 1 lot back into 2 lots of record. At that time, the board found the request to be appropriate so long as the applicant installed the necessary detention when you subdivide a property that's required by the village, and that the garage located on the northern subject property, northern portion of the property, be removed prior to a new plat of subdivision being recorded. So this is an image of the properties, the image on the right being the detached garage that I just mentioned. So originally, the two lots were non-conforming. The district has a lot width requirement of 125 feet. Originally, they were each only 105 feet wide, which is similar to the other properties that run north of the subject property as well in terms of lot width. The applicant is requesting to return the subject property back to that original condition. In doing such, the relief that would be necessary would be approval of a lot width variation to reduce it to 105 feet, as well as a new setback variation for the property on the south to re-grant the setback for the house from 12 feet to roughly 10 feet. The lots will meet the lot area requirement. And then the other relief that would be necessary would be from the subdivision code, a variation to allow for combined tentative and final plat approval, and then a variation for the stormwater to be in an easement rather than in an outlot. And the only other thing to think about is whether or not the garage needs to be removed before the final plat is recorded.
Okay. Again, I'll kick this off. If I understood everything that you said and everything that I read, this is a rollback to exactly the way it was before, including the variances that were granted from before. In addition to that, these lots are no different than the other lots that are existing there now of their neighbors in terms of width. Is that correct?
I don't remember the exact width, but the
Close.
lots look similar in nature as they
Right,
run
so
along the street.
by going backwards and approving this back to the way it was, we're not creating a situation that would be out of character with the neighborhood.
I don't believe so.
Okay. So my take on this is I don't have a problem going back. I think the gentleman that tried to combine them, I think tried to do something that would have been very nice and finds that that's not marketable in today's times. And I think if we didn't do it, it would impose an undue hardship on him. And I don't see anything wrong with what he's doing, but I would like to see the garage come down. So, Trustee Bueller?
My biggest concern on this is that if we went ahead and when it was consolidated from 2 into 1, we put additional drainage requirements in. What I want to make sure is that in doing this, we don't end up with less drainage than we have right now, simply by putting it into two separate lots. I want to make sure, because we're probably going to end up with greater lot coverage than we have now, which would then increase the need for it. So that's one thing I'd like the commission to look at.
Okay. Trustee Cecila?
I concur with Trustee Karianis.
Trustee Israel?
I concur. I have no objection to keeping the garage up, in the interim, to see if it can be reutilized.
Yeah.
Okay. Trustee Carlson?
I concur with Trustee Bueller about the drainage issue and with Trustee Israel about the garage remaining.
Okay. Trustee Hahn?
I concur with Trustee Cecila.
I forgot what she said. Okay.
With you.
The Plan Commission.
All right, so generally, this is pretty favorable, and it's on to the Plan Commission for...
And I have no other comments.
Did you have a comment?
She concurs with Trustee Cecila.
Okay. All right, on to the Plan Commission. This looks like it may work out after all. Okay, and the next item up is a preliminary review and request to amend special permit ordinance number 0323 to allow a building addition to St. Norbert's Church. St. Norbert's wants to do a building addition. I have a big smile on my face because I like what they're doing here. Go on.
Okay. Subject property is zoned IB, Institutional Building District. The property consists of the St. Norbert's Church and School. Shown here is an image of the area where the exterior addition that's being proposed will be located. The applicant is proposing a small building addition on the side of the church that would include a stairwell, an ADA-compliant restroom, elevator, and then there would be a ramp up to the entrance of this proposed addition. In addition to that request, the applicant is also proposing interior modifications and modifications to the entry steps and planters, but those do not require relief of amending the previous approval documents. So as you can see here, the aerial on the left where the circle is corresponds with the circle on the image on the right of where the addition would be located. As Trustee Kirianis mentioned, the applicant had received approval of a special permit and site plan approval in 2003. So before you this evening is a request to amend that special permit, to amend the site plan to account for the proposed minor building addition, and then as well as to grant a variation for the setback along Spruce Street. The setback along Spruce Street is a requirement of 40 feet since it's across the street from residential. Currently, the setback is 11.52 feet. The applicant is requesting a variation to reduce that to 3 feet 5 inches to accommodate the proposed building addition. As I mentioned, the relief would be amending the previously approved ordinance site plan and then the addition of a variation. Things to consider are the appropriateness of the building modifications and whether or not it's appropriate to amend the previously approved plan and grant the new setback variation.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. First of all, I'd like to say that if I understand this properly, they want to put a small addition to the building footprint outside the church in order to accommodate ADA compliance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Good luck, Village Board, if you don't approve this one. I just want to make sure that, and I already pretty much know the answer to this because I have been in there. That's about the only place they could put something like this for it to work properly. Is that about right?
Not being the architect working on this and not being as familiar with the interior of the building, I would think, though, yes, this is the best solution they were able to come up with.
So we're down to, you want to flip up that other slide where it shows what our concerns are supposed to be. Appropriateness of the proposed building modification, I think, is a given. To amend the previously approved plan, I think, is a given. Now, here comes the tough part, setback variation. So let me get this straight. They want to go down to what, about 3 feet from what is currently 11 feet, which was currently insufficient to begin with? And they want to do this just so that people with handicaps can go to church. Is that right?
Correct.
Have I got that? Okay. I don't see any problem with it. Trustee Bueller?
I'm okay with it, off the plan.
Trustee Cecila?
Same.
Trustee Israel?
I would like somebody, and it doesn't have to be at this point, explain to me what a narthex is.
Oh,
Otherwise,
I'll meet with you afterwards.
Otherwise, I'm fine with
I'll
it.
give you Church 101.
Okay, Trustee Collison?
I think it's great.
Trustee Hahn?
No objections.
And President Froome?
No problem.
All right. Well, that one looks like it's going to go through after all. Okay. The next one is preliminary review by the request, something wrong, by Drumsticks, for an outdoor seating area on the public right-of-way right by the Giant Chicken and changes on the on-street parking restrictions at 1363 Shermer Road.
Yes. Good evening. I'll run through this quickly. Here's an aerial showing the location of the outdoor seating area as well as 2 spaces the applicant would like designated as 20-minute parking spaces. Regarding the outdoor seating area and parking spaces, you had 2 images, or 1 image and a new image tonight showing you the location of where they plan to put the outdoor seating area. They're looking at having 5 tables for a total of 10 seats. They would have chairs and tables that they would bring in at the end of the evening, as well as demarcate the area, which is a code requirement, by a fence and planters. These are the images of the fence and planters. The hours of operation of the business, they're closed on Mondays. They're open Tuesday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. This outdoor seating area is different than the other ones we have in downtown. All of those are on private property, though they appear they're on the public right-of-way. This one is actually in the public right-of-way. So we would need to enter into a license agreement with them to use it. There are some minimum requirements that are listed here in terms of keeping a walkway so that pedestrians can pass. They must demarcate the area to note to everyone where their outdoor seating area is, and then each evening they must pull in the equipment. Since this is the first one we would be putting in the public right-of-way, the board will want to decide how much they want to charge for the use of the public right-of-way. In the past, the board has indicated an interest in a minimal charge for that. We've provided you information from other communities, and it ranges from based on a square foot, on a number of seats, or on a fixed amount. I should remind you, with any outdoor seating area, the initial fee is $50. That's the initial application. Subsequent renewals of that in future years is free. There's no charge. So staff is suggesting an amount of $1 per square foot. And in this instance, it would be $168 a year.
Plus the 50 for the
Initial application, yeah.
Okay.
The second issue is parking. A significant amount of Drumstick's business is carry-out. And in this area, they're finding customers having a challenge to make that quick pickup. And so what the applicant is requesting is that 2 of the spaces outside of their business be marked as 20-minute parking spaces to help with that turnover. So the board will want to decide if that's appropriate. Again, these aren't designated for Drumsticks. Anyone could use them, but they would be 20-minute parking spaces. So the board will want to decide if it's appropriate to designate both of them as 20-minute spaces. You could even discuss if 20 minutes is the appropriate amount of time. If the board is interested in pursuing this, then staff would follow our typical procedure where we would send out letters to the nearby property owners and tenants to let them know of the change and seek their input. And we would come back to the board with a proposal in terms of working with Public Works and the police department on what would be appropriate regarding limiting the parking to 20 minutes or some other amount. So the issues are, is the proposed location appropriate? What amount, if any, should be charged for the annual fee? Is the circulation inside as well as outside appropriate for this location? And are there any additional operational limits? And then finally, is it appropriate to designate some spaces for shorter-term parking than what is already there, which is 2-hour parking?
Okay.
David, does this need to go to the Plan Commission, or can it come just back to the board?
Just come back to the board.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks, President Frum. I'll kick this off with some generalities. First of all, let's start with the easy one. 20-minute on-street parking, is it appropriate? I think it's very appropriate. I don't know if 20 minutes is right or 15 minutes is right, but somewhere where a limited amount of parking so that their customers, and by the way, I think you said it very nicely, it isn't limited to their customers. So it's not just for the Drumsticks people, but a 15-minute so people can get in and out of there, and it assists the business of Drumsticks, which clearly would have a problem with that. I'm all for that. So that's the simple part of it. The outdoor seating in a public right-of-way, if we approve this, it starts to set a precedent. But I don't have a problem with that precedent. I think that downtown, for it to be pedestrian-friendly and to be family-friendly, the more outdoor seating places that we can have, the more beautiful it becomes. I don't see that as detrimental at all. I see it as very, very positive. Of course, there has to be rules. And I'm also in favor of a minimum in terms of revenue. This isn't the way the village should be making its money, and we want to encourage businesses to prosper downtown. So I'm in favor. I don't know what the right amount is, but what you mentioned certainly isn't a problem with me. I am concerned, though, that they follow, and I know when we did this for outdoor eating spaces before, we had a list of requirements. They have to police every hour or something like that. They weren't able to use certain things, the trash receptacles had to be present, that kind of stuff, so that this is going to turn over. I don't want it to turn into a litter area. I'm sure they don't either. So I think that they have to ascribe to those things that we've already established there, and I don't think that they would have any problem with it. So I'm in favor of doing this. I think that the more we can do to encourage our businesses downtown in an admittedly difficult position, that building needs to do better than it's doing, and this seems to be a very, very popular restaurant, and I encourage them to stay there and work hard and grow. So I'm all in favor of this. Trustee Bueller?
I like the idea. I like the location and the use. I think the fee that you mentioned is reasonable. I'm willing to talk about some other things if other board members are interested. The 20-minute parking is okay. My only concern about that, does Drumsticks do delivery?
They do DoorDash. Don't ask me how I know. They do DoorDash and Uber Eats. I'm a fan. DoorDash and Uber Eats.
Okay. So
They don't
okay.
deliver,
All right. Okay. Right. Because that's different. Because my concern was that some prior tenants had a delivery car that would be sitting in the red zone very frequently, and I don't want this to be the reserved parking for the delivery vehicle that's stationed at the restaurant. That's not the idea behind it. The idea is to have outside people be able to come in and get food from there. I'm okay with it. And as far as I'm concerned, we can write it up. Oh, standard rules on outside eating,
Right.
as Jim was talking about.
You like their chicken?
It's good.
I mean, the big one outside.
Oh, I like, that one? That one's good, too. That one's good, too. I'll tell you what, we drove by it the other night, and I didn't see the chicken. It was dark, and I said, "Did you see that chicken?" No. I said, "Go around a block and look."
First time I saw that, I was so glad to see it.
I think they're
Are you
looking
done?
for-
Yeah, it's a
they're looking
perfect
for a
gateway,
name
right.
for the chicken, so that'll be
We're going to name the chicken?
No, we're not going to name the chicken. They're looking for a name for
Oh,
the
they are looking.
Yeah, I'm staying out of it.
They should make that public so on their Facebook page.
They did. Okay. Do you have this slide?
Cecil.
I'm looking for the slide. So I'll start while you're looking for that, David, with the outdoor eating. I'm absolutely fine with the outdoor eating. I agree with Trustee Kirianis. Let's just continue that and encourage that. $1 a square foot is fine with me. Are we requiring them to bring the furniture inside? I don't have a
They
problem
need
with
to either bring it in or secure it.
Why did, oh, yeah, okay. Well,
So it's their option.
okay, fair enough. You just said bring it in. And so,
That's their plan to bring it in.
okay, so I'm familiar with this area because I love this restaurant. Now, see where the, sort of the pink, word bubble is? There's all of that, all of those spaces there, that's just lined off. Is there a reason that's all lined off? Can we get 2 more spaces in there? I hesitate to take any parking away in the downtown area, but I do notice that folks are double parking where these lines are, and they're running into Drumsticks to pick up their orders.
I mean, we can work with the public works staff and Metra. There are some safety issues in terms of cars that close to the track maneuvering in and out of parking spaces. So that's why currently that area is striped that distance back from the track.
So there's pretty much no movement there, you think?
We can explore it again. We can talk again, but in the past, when we looked at it, it's been that we need to keep that much space.
I might say that during the dinner hour, those spaces be the 20-minute spaces, but during the lunch hour, no. I think parking is at a premium downtown. The Metro lot is fairly full midday, so I would be a little bit different than everyone else with respect to the hours of that parking, and maybe 10 minutes is enough.
I'm sorry, so it's the limited hours just in the evening for
Yeah.
parking?
And then I'm thinking like 10 minutes is enough. 20 minutes, maybe you think you can run in and eat
Indigestion time. All right, are you
That
done?
sounds like a challenge. Kids and activities, it's been done.
It's been
I'm
done.
thinking that, the lunchtime is really when you need a spot to duck in and duck out,
Okay, well,
so.
Okay, so next was trustee Israel.
Actually, I like the ideas that are being floated. I like the idea of outdoor eating. I am somewhat more pragmatic about use of public way as a private enterprise, and would like to look a little bit more into what setting that price point should be, because that is effectively public space that we are leasing back to a private enterprise. So while I love the idea of putting it out there, I don't like the idea of leaving the furniture out at night. It just clutters up the sidewalk. So to the extent that they can bring it in, I think that that's a far better idea. The idea of parking on limiting parking, I do agree with doing the limited parking time during lunch. I think that that's a good idea, and, we can try it at 20 minutes. We can try it, a period of time where we can evaluate. I think that's most what I'd like to see out of this. I want to make sure we're not doing any harm in terms of basically getting people in, getting people out, and having them have a nice experience right down there. That's
Thank
it.
you. Trustee Collins?
I agree about the outdoor eating. The fee seems fine. I guess my concern with the parking as enforcement, I certainly would not want to put any of our manpower on that. So I don't know if we've looked into other villages who have these types of parking situations and how it's actually enforced, because I definitely would not be in favor of spending any of our police power or time on that. And that's all I have.
Trustee Hahn?
I like the idea of the 20-minute parking spaces. I think Trustee Bueller brought up a good point where, everything is getting outsourced now. Everything is, all jobs, all duties are becoming third-party duties. So these delivery people, whether it's Uber Eats or some of these other apps, where they're independent contractors, and I think that they might not be, they might be competing to get the business to deliver for drumsticks, which could create, they might end up using these parking spaces. So I would like to see some type of regulation, some ordinance or something that mandates that is for the public. It's not for the delivery people. And I like the idea of the outdoor seating. I think downtown Northbrook should encourage that, to encourage, as Trustee Cariana said, more visibility, that people can walk, that it's a livable space. I've walked down that place, down that sidewalk a couple of times, and by the way, I think drumsticks is fantastic. The chicken's great. I think 20 minutes is perfect, because fresh fried chicken, you need at least 15 minutes to, you can't, unlike Popeyes, where it's sitting under a heat lamp. But I guess I'm just, there's that little curve when you walk from the tracks kind of southwest, and if there's like servers coming in and out, it could be a little tight, but then again, I know that they're going to get indemnification, they're going to get insurance for those types of situations, so that's good. But other than that, that's my only kind of concern.
Thank you, Trustee Hahn. President Fromm?
I'm fine with this. I would suggest that staff comes back to the board with their sort of consensus or understanding of what we've said, and then if it needs to go to committee, we can decide at that point. But I'd sort of like to move it as quickly as possible so that they can take advantage of the summer.
Okay, wonderful. That's it for my report tonight, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Public safety.
I don't believe we have anything tonight.
Okay. Administration and Finance, Trustee Ciesla.
President Froome, we have two ordinances up for consideration this evening. One is an ordinance regarding the minimum wage, and the other is regarding paid sick leave. So I think how we're going to handle this is that I'm going to ask President Froome to handle the public comment and the public discussion, and once we're concluded with that, we'll go through the board discussion and determine what the board wants to do. And so with that, President Froome?
Excuse me, I'm going to ask David to
Okay.
do a brief presentation,
Okay.
and then we'll go to public comment.
So as you were aware, Cook County adopted two ordinances creating a minimum wage and an earned sick leave requirement for employers in Cook County. The village attorney has opined that the village does have the authority to opt out or exempt our employers from these requirements, and the ordinances that are drafted before you do that and state that all Northbrook employers would need to comply with all state and federal laws, but not with the Cook County regulation. So quickly go over the requirements of the ordinance. The earned sick leave ordinance, in terms of what employees are covered, it's anyone who works 2 hours in a 2-week period physically within the county and works 80 hours in a 120-day period. The code, or the ordinance, does exempt certain employees, railroad employees, as well as certain waivers can be granted under collective bargaining units negotiations. In terms of employers who are required to comply, if you have a place of business within Cook County and you employ at least one individual, you must comply. And it does exempt government entities from having to comply with this sick leave requirement. How much sick leave must an employer provide an employee? They must provide 1 hour per 40 hours worked, and the cap is 40 hours over a 12-month period, and that an employee can carry over 20 hours into the next 12-month period. So that's a quick overview in terms of the earned sick leave. In terms of the minimum wage requirement, it has the same requirement in terms of employees, in terms of having to work 2 hours during a 2-week period physically within the county, as well as having to work 80 hours in a 120-day period. There are exemptions or groups of employees who are not covered, and those are listed here. Some similar to the earned sick leave requirements, and then additional ones. In the ordinance, it references some sections of the state code which exempts these other groups of employees. In terms of employers, again, the same requirement as the earned sick leave requirement, except government entities are excluded, except Cook County is not excluded from the ordinance in terms of a governmental entity. In terms of the minimum wage, have listed here the federal and state minimum wage. Effective January 1 of this year, the minimum wage would go up to $10 an hour. It would continue to go up $1 an hour through 2020, and then beginning in 2021, it would increase based on CPI, the Consumer Price Index, but there would be a cap of 2.5% would be the maximum increase. So that's a quick overview of the code requirements. Other communities have opted out or are considering opting out of these two requirements, and those are listed here in terms of what we understand to be the current list, and it's changing daily. There's been some, in the materials you have received to date, reference to some referendums referenda that were on ballots. In 2014, there was a statewide non-binding question, and it was, shall the minimum wage in Illinois for adults over 18 be raised to $10 an hour beginning January 1, 2015? Of those Northbrook residents who voted on that specific question, the approval was 70% yes, 30% no. Then in 2016, there was a Cook County question on the ballot. So just Cook County residents were asked, should the state of Illinois enact an Earned Sick Leave for Employees Act, which provided a sick leave benefit to all employees in the state of Illinois, and that referendum also passed by a significant amount, 75 to 25%, again, non-binding questions. So in summary, the board has for your consideration, if you choose to act on them, 2 ordinances that would exempt Northbrook employers from having to provide these Cook County benefits, and that our employers would have to comply with state and federal laws. And Village Attorney Elrod could elaborate more on that if he needs to.
Do the trustees have any questions, or Attorney Elrod, are you going to say something?
No, if you have
Okay.
questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Trustees have any questions for David?
Okay. Now is the opportunity for the public to speak. We have rules that we have adopted a number of years ago. They're the same rules we use for any kind of public response to us or opinions to us. This is not a public hearing. I will ask for people to come up, to give us your name. You will have 2 minutes to speak. At 2 minutes, I will ask you to wrap up. I would ask that once you're finished, if you would walk over to the village clerk, and she's got a pad of paper there, if you would just write down your name so that we make certain that we have your name appropriately and we know the spelling of it. You do not need to give us your address. I would ask now 2 questions. One is there anyone on the side of not opting out that is speaking for the group, or are you all individuals? Okay, is there anyone, and I guess this is probably to the chamber more than anybody else, I don't know. Tinsley, do you want to speak on behalf of the whole group? That doesn't stop anybody from speaking as an individual.
I'm speaking on behalf of a number of people that are here, so
I mean, it's up to you to decide if if you want to, I'm asking to give everybody an opportunity. Okay, so then let's leave it that way. What I will do, and I ask you please to respect one another. I'm assuming that most of us here are, we're all, and I assume most of you here are Northbrook residents. We are trying to do what's best for the community, even though we might have different ideas of what that is. So I ask please, no cheering, no clapping, no booing, none of that. I will ask also, I mean, it's 8:30, we'd like to get through this tonight, so we have an answer for you. So I would ask that you do respect one another. I will stop any kind of, as I said, cheering, booing, any of that type of thing. So the way we normally do it is we go down one side and then we go down the other. I would ask that we start up here. Please line up. Do not wait till the person that's speaking sits down before you stand up. That just takes way too much time. So let's just start from this side, and then I'll call for this side. Please line up. Give us your name, your comments, 2 minutes. And as I said, I will time it on my phone, and I will ask you to wrap up once you have reached the 2-minute mark. So, up to you to begin. Come on up. Rabbi.
Yeah, I'm Sid Hellbrown. I've been a Northbrook resident for
Just pull the microphone.
for 22 years, and I'm the rabbi over at Temple Bethel. I was heartened that St. Norbert's is going to get there, that there's so much care about the religious community in Northbrook, and it exists strongly. I really feel that this is an issue where our values, our community values, are what the question is. And it seems to me that our community has had an opportunity to speak on two occasions in 2014 and 2016, as we just heard, and by an overwhelming majority stated that sick leave and fair or a minimum wage basis is something that we believe in. In my day job, I read the Torah quite often, and what it tells us is that the sign of a just community, a fair community, is a community that protects the rights of those who are most at risk, the stranger, the orphan, the widow, the sick. A just community protects the rights of the people who can't take care of themselves. We provide opportunities for them to find success, for them to earn a living, for them to be able to care for their families. And that, to me, that's what we're talking about. I think we have a wonderful, beautiful community. We are blessed in so many ways. And I think sometimes we don't always live up or act according to the ideals we hold in our heart. And to me, this is one of those issues that is an issue where our heart tells us something, and I know it's not easy for everyone to always accomplish, but our heart tells us what is right, and justice only happens when we act on it. And so I ask us to act on what is right and just for those most at risk in our society and our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name's Herb Brenner. I'm a Northbrook resident. And one of the points I wanted to make tonight is most of the Northbrook residents are still not aware of this. I've had 2 articles in the papers, but a lot of people don't read the paper. And the ones that we've spoken to, and this is the Northbrook Working Families Coalition, these individuals were surprised. They didn't realize that this was being considered tonight. And when we told them, I didn't have one person who said, no, I think that's a bad idea. I think they should stay at $8.25 an hour, which really is closer to a poverty wage than it is a living wage. A living wage in Cook County is about $13 an hour for one individual. For a family, 2 adults and 1 child, it's closer to $25 an hour. And that's just getting by. That's what a living wage is. It's just getting by. As I say, the people we've spoken to, and we didn't have much notice, as did most of the other villages. I think if they had more notice and they had been able to get the word out, there would have been a lot more people in those villages who would have said, this isn't right. This isn't right. And keep in mind, one of the reasons this was passed by Cook County and by Chicago is we have one of the highest cost counties and cities, along with others that have already passed these ordinances. That's the reason for it. The referendum happened in 2014. It's been almost 3 years now. What's happened? It's still $8.25 an hour. So what I would urge each of you tonight is that you do not take a vote on this. If you have any questions as to how the Northbrook residents feel about this, why don't we have a town hall next month? And call a town hall and see how the Northbrook residents feel about it.
Can you finish up, please?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tinsley Garris. I'm a resident of Northbrook, but tonight I'm here in my role as president of the Northbrook Chamber of Commerce, an organization that represents over 700 area businesses. On behalf of the business community, we urge you to opt Northbrook out of the Cook County minimum wage paid sick leave ordinances. Our organization has been following the Cook County action on minimum wage and paid sick leave for the last number of months. We've worked diligently to keep our businesses informed on these issues through our newsletter articles, web postings, and meetings. There's a universal theme to the feedback that we've gotten. Our businesses are concerned about their ability to compete with these county-imposed employment mandates. We've heard from businesses that the ordinances will force them to reduce the number of employees, while others are saying that they're considering relocating. I'm not here tonight to debate what the minimum wage should be or whether all workers should receive paid sick leave. I'm here to tell you that determining this at a county level is the wrong way to do it. Northbrook will lose in this game. Our retailers, our restaurants, and our service businesses will compete against neighboring Lake County as well as 18 other communities that have opted out of these county mandates, including Glenview and Wheeling. These competitors are not miles away. They're literally across the street. An increase in minimum wage and paid sick leave will push the cost of goods and services higher, making shopping and dining in Northbrook more expensive than neighboring communities. Many have pledged in their letters to you and in their testimony tonight that they're willing to pay more. But I say, really? It's in our nature for most of us to seek the best deal. Consumers and business owners alike are more educated than ever on price. How many of you have searched the internet for a better price? How many will sneak across the street to shop at Home Depot if it's less expensive than Ace Hardware? To grocery shop at Jewel rather than Sunset? Honestly, I think more than we can afford. We cannot gamble Northbrook's economic health on well-intended pledges. This is not just a local shopping issue. Northbrook's industrial areas are home to many manufacturers and distributors that are selling in the highly competitive global market, where pennies are negotiated. Passing along a significant increase in labor costs is not an option that they have. The concern about business relocation and reduced business investment is not inflamed rhetoric in an emotional debate. You have the Cook County property tax differential that serves as a case study of what happens when there's an imbalance in the business environment. As you all know, it's not unusual for an industrial or commercial businesses to seek the lower real estate tax rate
Kenzie, I need you to wrap up.
on the other side of Lake Cook Road. The board has had to consider too many 6B applications over the years not to acknowledge the economic impact the county property tax differential has had on Northbrook. These county employment mandates will have the same disruptive effect.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Ripke. I'm co-owner of Microsystems Incorporated. We are a family-owned records management service bureau and have been in business since 1957. I'm here today to ask you to opt out of the Cook County minimum wage and sick leave rules that are to be implemented on July 1st of this year. For the last 20 years, we have operated a 45,000 square foot facility, which is located 1/2 mile from our competitors in Lake County, who will not be subjected to this plan. We employ 25 full-time employees, and we also have a temp service which supplies us with anywhere from 6 to 10 entry-level people who do document preparation for us. The temp service pays them slightly above minimum for the entry-level work they do, and I get charged a fee that still allows me to make a reasonable profit based on what I can charge compared to my competition. The competition that can reside as close as 1/2 mile away. Every mandated $1 minimum wage increase that I have to absorb each year will make me less and less competitive with my competitors in Lake County, 1/2 mile away. My Lake County competitors will be able to charge aggressively less than me and still make a good profit because their costs will not be going up, while mine will be going through the roof with this new plan. Having to compete on an uneven playing field with Lake County and other counties who are not subjected to this plan will cost me business and profits big time. The only alternative is to try to do more with less. Does that mean less employees? Or move out of Cook County in order to be competitive. Either way, employees lose their jobs and the minimum wage increase fails, or Northbrook loses a good tax-paying business and they pay the price for having another vacant building. The playing field will remain level, and Northbrook companies can remain competitive with adjoining counties if Northbrook does the right thing and opts out of the minimum wage increase plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can you sign in, sir? Thank you.
I'm Bob Tucker. I have a company that provides caregivers for seniors. So I'm looking at this from that perspective. One of the things that happens is we are currently serving Lake County and Cook County. What will happen if we have to pay more? And currently we're paying our caregivers $11 to $13 per hour. They have a 401k program. They have insurance, major medical insurance. They have several other benefits that we offer to them. So we're trying to be good employers of people. The other hand, and what we're facing is seniors on fixed incomes. And currently, to make any kind of decent profit, we're having to charge them about $25 per hour. And that's typical across our industry with all the other expenses that we have. When you talk about $25 per hour for a senior, that can start adding up very, very quickly. So in terms of a minimum wage, all for it, it's great. The reality is, when it comes down to a business like mine, seniors are going to end up paying more for their services. It's going to force some of those seniors to go to an independent caregiver that's illegal, that may not be vetted, that may take advantage of them. There's a lot of potential challenges by having an independent caregiver that these people will be forced to. And we're seeing it every day already with the rates that we have to charge. So the one thing that I would have you consider in this is what's going to happen to the people that we're doing business with, the seniors, and their costs will have to go up. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Kaufman. I own a business in Northbrook, and I stand with the chamber as a longtime chamber member as well to see what it does to our businesses, being that all these other towns very close to us, I've got to compete with them for people, and it's very hard to find good people. I pay way over the minimum wage, but it's in order to find somebody. I just hired a guy that came from a business in Wheeling. If we've got a huge disparity in what benefits and paid time off I've got to provide, that's a real problem finding people. And I think that, if we're competing, it's not a level playing field unless we opt out. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Boris. I own Hell's Kitchen Catering, 28 years in Northbrook. We have 40 full-time employees and over 100 part-time and seasonal. And I'm troubled by the debate that's bubbling up around the law scheduled to take effect in less than 6 weeks. Most of us have never had to contend with the stress of losing a day's pay to care for a sick child or an ailing parent, knowing that doing so means that a new winter coat or a pair of boots for that same child will now be unaffordable. That's part of the real everyday stresses in the lives of minimum wage workers. I strenuously object, and let me say this first, the new ordinance is going to mandate for us that we now offer paid time off in the form of paid sick days to our over 100 part-timers as well. Will we need to examine the impact of this and make some adjustments? Of course we will. Is it going to put my 32-year-old company out of business? Hardly. If that one small change in my labor model were enough to do that, then I think my overall business model would be extremely flawed to begin with. We've been hearing arguments about the fact that these sort of mandates are going to put businesses out of business since we said that 8-year-olds wouldn't be allowed to work in factories over 70 years ago. I strenuously object to the argument that certain businesses will be unable to absorb the cost of compensating workers with something close to a living wage. Any well-run business must be capable of adapting to change, both short-term and long-term. We all adjust as necessary to shifting market conditions, changing tastes in the marketplace, and yes, to the needs of not only our clients, but our employees as well. This mandate sits squarely in the lap of the greater good. Will a few businesses need to make adjustments? Of course. But I'm not running my business for a single year's profit. As a 32-year-old company, I need to look to the future. And I need to look to the conditions that will sustain my business 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and past that. I need to look at what a vibrant economy requires for long-term sustained growth and support the inputs that go into creating those conditions. And of all the conditions necessary for long-term growth, two jump off the page. First, consumer demand. We need to ensure that there's enough disposable income flowing through our local economies for years to come to fuel our sales engines. Raising local wages at the bottom of the economic ladder is the most surefire way to ensure that disposable income is available for years to come. Second, an educated, healthy, and engaged workforce, allowing the most vulnerable members of our workforce the opportunity to care for themselves or a sick child or an ailing parent one day every 10.5 weeks is the least we can do as employers. We want Northbrook to be a place that attracts quality businesses and quality employees to its borders with its positive image.
Can you start wrapping up, please?
I will wrap right now. Whatever this board decides, know that rejecting protections for workers' wages and paid leave will put the village of Northbrook squarely on the wrong side of history. A decision to opt out of an ordinance that only has the best interest of the most vulnerable members of our community at heart is not only short-sighted, but will eventually be deemed irrelevant. For a municipality that enjoys such wealth and privilege, turning our backs on the most vulnerable members of our community, on the pretense that our vibrant business sector lacks the smarts or the wherewithal to adjust to a gradual change in labor standards is, I believe, selling ourselves extremely short and selling the heart and soul of what many of us believe to be the core values of Northbrook down the river. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on, guys. Thank you.
I'd like to address the effects of
Can you give us your name?
I'm sorry. I am Bob Caldwell. I'm the managing partner of Hallmark Home Care. And I'd like to address the effects of these potential ordinances on truly our most vulnerable community, and that is our seniors. I've been a business owner in the senior care business here in Northbrook since 2010. I am in favor of Northbrook opting out of these minimum wage and sick leave ordinances, as I believe both the businesses and residents of Northbrook will lose. The legitimate senior care business is already very price sensitive, and it is highly regulated through the state's Illinois Department of Public Health. These ordinances will only further drive up the cost for senior care within the Northbrook community. In doing so, families will be forced to do one of two things: provide less care, or in some cases, no care to their senior loved ones with the hope that they will remain safe and secure, or they will use less reputable, unlicensed care sources whose workers are questionable in their backgrounds, their training, their health, and even their legality. Neither is a good option for Northbrook. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Glenn Weintraub. I'm a Northbrook business owner and resident, and I support the Chamber's position and believe that Northbrook should opt out. And it's not because of the minimum wage. It's because of the uneven playing field that it will put Northbrook businesses at a disadvantage. And that's the real reason. I believe in everything that everyone's saying here today, but to put Northbrook businesses at a disadvantage to someone across the street is just not fair and not correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Richard Rivkin, president of Safety Guard International, an 81-year-old family-owned business that's been in Northbrook since 1979. I believe that a minimum wage allows people to live properly, live well, but I object to the county setting the rules for this. I think the marketplace is a much better way to set the rules. For our business, and we have people at various skill levels from unskilled and up, we can't get people at the minimum wage. We can't get people at 150% of the minimum wage that are willing to travel to Northbrook, and work for us. And I don't think we're that unusual. In addition, our fringe benefit package doesn't specifically use the word sick leave, because if somebody needs to take time off to attend a school conference, we don't want to encourage them to lie to us and tell us that they're sick. So we give them personal leave days. So the intent of our fringe benefit program is certainly well beyond what the county appears to have mandated. But my issue is that I believe the marketplace will set what the wages are paid for Northbrook businesses. The competition, yes, everybody has made reference to the competition, whether it's Wheeling, Glenview, across Lake Cook Road, or whatever. And certainly for those people that have very visibly made an issue over a living wage, I don't have the data, and I asked Tinsley Garris if she had the data. I don't know how many Northbrook businesses actually pay the minimum wage where this becomes an issue. So it's a little bigger issue in terms of let the marketplace decide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill Buttimer. I've been a resident of Northbrook for 20 years, and I strongly believe that our national minimum wage is too low. I even voted for this ordinance during the election. However, I now regret having voted that way. Let me tell you why I changed my mind. For many years, I've been a volunteer leader at the North Suburban YMCA, and I've studied the finances of that organization. I'm familiar with its operations. And the damaging impact on this not-for-profit is very apparent. Unfortunately, because this law only applies to Cook County and it allows opt-outs, many competing organizations outside of Northbrook don't need to comply. This means that fees can't be raised to cover these additional costs, which are significant. And keep in mind that there are no profits to subsidize the law for a not-for-profit. The economics don't work because you can't drive this type of change at a local level. It has to be done at a national or state level. This law has a built-in self-destruct mechanism, and we're seeing that happen in other things in our country and how laws are being handled. There are many other ways to support those in need. For instance, we can allocate money from the village of Northbrook to the Northfield Township Food Pantry if we want to take care of people. This is not the right way to do it. Please opt out of this poorly designed local ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Harley Corman, and I'm a 47-year resident of Northbrook. My company, Corman Letterer, has ownership of over 600,000 square feet of commercial and industrial space in Sky Harbor, and in 2016 alone, our Northbrook properties generated over $2,256,000 in local real estate taxes. That's $2.25 million in taxes every year. To say that we have skin in the game is an understatement. My partners and associates are involved in and have leadership roles in a host of activities in the village. We chair the ICDC, are a current board member of the Chamber, member of the EDC, and a supporter of causes from the YMCA to Rotary and Civic. We are involved. We are not a single-purpose group. These county ordinances scare me, and I encourage the village of Northbrook to opt out, just as Glenview and Wheeling and other communities have. My tenants in Northbrook are not going to come out and get involved in this fracas. If they can't thrive here, they're going to get up and leave. That frightens me, not only as a business owner with empty space, but also as a resident who depends on these businesses to generate tax dollars. Currently, I'm involved with two companies, GY Packing and Springfield Industries, looking to lower overhead to survive. Both are manufacturers totaling over 120,000 square feet of space and are considering leaving Northbrook to reduce their cost of operations. Now, a lot of people in this room tonight adhere to the policy of family first, then business. I would rather listen to the words of Warren Buffett, who says, take care of your business first so you can take care of your family. Lead with your head, and your heart will be provided for. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Nortman.
I'm a Northbrook resident, also like Harley in the real estate business, and one of the higher tax-paying real estate companies in Northbrook. It's kind of unfortunate that I think that this is even here at the local level. I think that everybody on both sides would agree, certainly by the percentage of 2/3 of the 2015 referendum, that everybody in the state agrees that the minimum wage should be raised. The villain, if there's a villain here, is that the state of Illinois won't act. And that's unfortunate, and that's now we're in a situation that this matter is being handled on a city and a village and a town-by-town basis, and that's really not where it belongs. And I also second what Harley said as it relates to making sure that Northbrook is competitive. When companies look to locate in areas, they have boxes that they check off before they even decide whether they're going to look. And costs have everything to do with it. I don't believe that Northbrook has a tremendous amount of minimum wage paying businesses. Most people can choose to pay more. This ordinance doesn't restrict anybody from paying above the minimum wage. But what it does do is it makes Northbrook at a disadvantage with its neighbors. There's not these other communities that are voting to opt out aren't against raising minimum wage. What they're against is being told that it's not a level playing field. The state needs to act, and we can't be at a disadvantage to our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Fleegler, 1814 Fieldwood Drive in Northbrook. I wanted to start by just saying it's a thrill to see all of you up here after our election this spring, especially in the current time we're in. To see local democracy in action is thrilling to me. So there's a lot of emotions in this room tonight, obviously. I think it's important to base this conversation in data and information. I know a lot of you value that. As you know, as we've discussed tonight, in 2014, 71% of Northbrook voters, 10,000 actual people in this village, which is quite a few people, voted in favor of raising the minimum wage. 2 years later, 75% of Northbrook voters, 15,000 people, that's a lot of people, voted in favor of earned sick leave. So we've seen ample evidence of these numbers, and you see many people in this room tonight supporting these efforts. We're wearing red in support of this. Your board packet contains 250 signatures on a petition, dozens of letters, and like I said, many of us are here tonight in support of an increased minimum wage and paid sick leave. And yet we're getting the sense from some trustees and some in the room that these votes should be discounted, that the Northbrook voters would have voted differently today, knowing that some of our neighboring towns have chosen to opt out, that maybe if this was a race to the bottom, they would see things differently. And I like to think that we would not actually see these things differently at all, that this is not a race to the bottom, that our voters actually know when they voted the way that they did exactly what they wanted to see. As trustees, I know you've had a long month of conversation with voters and businesses. I wanted to thank you for that. Again, I know this is not an easy vote and not an easy meeting, especially shortly after an election. Over the course of these conversations, some of you have come to the conclusion in how you would vote, and I just ask that you continue to listen to the voters of this village. Setting aside your personal votes, I'd also like to know how you would come to the conclusion that the rest of the referendum voters no longer represent the majority of Northbrook voters. In your individual conversations, I ask you to reflect on what you have heard across the board. I also ask you to reflect on what you've heard tonight and whether it is hard data or an atmosphere of fear, what ifs, and racing to the bottom. And I ask you to focus on what you can control and what we can control as a village, not what we can control across a county line, a town line, what the state does, but what we can control here, now, tonight. The choice we have in front of us, not thinking about the what ifs, not kicking the can down the road, but thinking about the choices that we have here. Where is the evidence that not just some of the trustees, but 30+% of the Northbrook referendum voters would change their minds? There truly is none. Please listen to the residents who got informed on this issue, emailed you, signed a petition, and attended tonight. We support our residents who need a living wage now. You had a thorough hearing tonight, and I thank you for that. I also wanted to...
Start wrapping up, please.
Yeah, I know this is a little bit maybe dramatic, but I think it's actually quite true. I wanted to quote from Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, "We have come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. This is not the time to say there is a future opportunity to do this, another place, another time. Now is the opportunity to do the right thing for people who work hard to earn a living and to help them earn a living wage and earn the paid sick leave that they deserve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sal Mansell. I'm a resident of Northbrook. I wear a couple of hats. I'm the vice chairman of the Northbrook YMCA, and I'm also a business owner. I'm president of Reeves Georgia Moving Company in Franklin Park. With the Y, we have over 300 people working there, 227 part-time, 48 seasonal. Obviously, this is a killer for the Y, especially on the sick policy, which I call a PTO. It's not even a sick policy. Anybody who reads this thing, checked with a couple of our HR attorneys, Lehner, Muchin, and Much and Shas. They've never seen anything written so crazy in their life as far as keeping track of this and accruing all the hours, especially for part-time people. So therefore, that's a big problem. Now, with my company, I got a company that's 134 years old. We already pay way over the minimum wage. You can't get anybody doing moving storage that's going to work for not minimum wage. And we already take care of people with their PTO days. So that's not a problem. What I have a real problem with, it's not a level playing field. By that I mean I don't mind competition. In fact, I like competition. The better the competition, the better it makes me. But this is not, you got about 20 municipalities that opted out of this thing. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you got to have 30,000 people in a municipality to have home rule. So like in Franklin Park where I'm at, there's no choice. They have to honor it because they only have 19,000 people. But that gives a lot of competition to opt out of it, and it's not a level playing field. If this law was going to be a law, then make it mandatory or stay out of our businesses.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Charles Sykorowski. I'm a resident of Northbrook. I live at Cherry Lane Condos. I was the condo president for a while. This is the first time I've ever come to a board meeting. I want to thank the village board for all the great work you do in governing the village. I'm for the increase in the minimum wage. I would reason it in two ways. First of all, Northbrook is an affluent community, and it's conspicuous to me that a community like ours would not go along with something like this. It seems unseemly, to tell you the truth, some of the other villages and towns that have opted out of it. But as far as the main argument that comes up, which is the level playing field, to me, the way I would reason it out is it seems to prove too much in a way to argue for the level playing field, because that begs the question, well, what if how low would the minimum wage have to be before you said, well, we need a minimum wage? In other words, it goes right to the question of whether there should even be a minimum wage. Now, it turns out conveniently, there is a minimum wage that, is lower than what we have. But if you were to increase it by this amount, I think we've all agreed it's still not excessive. It's probably not a living wage. So, yes, I understand that there's a potential problem with a level playing field, but it really, if you're going to have a minimum wage, and this is not an excessive one, then it doesn't matter whether the other groups, whether you have a competition problem or not. If it's right, and you ought to do it regardless of the competition. If you say the competition is too important, then you're really against the concept of the minimum wage in the first place. So I think there's just a question of what's the right thing to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you sign in, please?
Hi, my name's Rob Long. I'm a 20-year resident of Northbrook, and I think I'm going to politely challenge the board on two issues. I've lived in Northbrook a long time. I've done 2 or 3 major rehabs to my house in that period of time, and Northbrook has some of the most strict policies about getting permits, about requiring things to be done properly, and that's because this is a quality community. We want houses in this community to be built properly, to be safe, and guess what? It is harder to get things done in Northbrook than it is in Wheeling. But when they're done in Northbrook, by Northbrook's rules, they are better. It makes our houses more valuable. It makes my house more valuable because the guy next door does it that way. So that's one place where we've said, damn the market, we'll do what we think the right thing is to do. Second example is, this is a very high tax community. It is. Property taxes are expensive. The primary source of those taxes goes to, guess what? Schools. We have some of the finest schools in the country. We pay a premium for those schools. We don't say, gee, Wheeling pays, again, I pick on Wheeling, but Wheeling pays less for their schools, so we should be paying less. We've decided that we want to have the quality of schools that gives us the quality of graduates, that gives you business owners the quality of employees that you want to have. So I think those are two areas where Northbrook has very clearly said, we're not going to race for the bottom. We're not going to be the cheapest place to do business. We are going to do the right thing. And I just, a couple of comments on what folks have said. This whole idea of somebody said it was harder to get people if you paid them more. I had a hard time with that logic stream. I mean, again, if you're paying appropriately, if you have the right kinds of benefits. By the way, PTO is just about a common thing in the corporate world, as most of you know. Paid time off. It's not differentiated by sick leave, to be fair. So, I don't understand. Again, you have the opportunity to pay a little bit more consistently, although, again, a lot of people said they don't have minimum wage employees. So this really, it's a red herring. And finally, my wife made the best point of all. Do you really want sick people who are in the food service business working when they're sick? Not me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Doug?
Good evening. I'm Doug Gerleman. I'm a resident of Northbrook. To me, America in general was built on a tradition of neighbor helping neighbor. We work together when we have strong communities. That means not separating the rich people from the poor people. We all have to help each other out. And in fact, that helps our business because our businesses perform better when we have employees that are happy, that are willing to work hard to provide the good services that we all want. And I'll go to a place that's more expensive if it has that kind of good quality service. I think that's very important. So I'm completely in favor of going with increasing the minimum wage. And I think it's really a hazard to the community if we continue to make people take lower wages than they can get by on, that they can live on, because it destroys the quality of their work and the services that they provide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Grace Grady. I'm a one-year resident.
Can you just hold the microphone closer to your mouth? Thank you.
I'm a one-year resident in Northbrook. I'm also going to come here tonight. I planned to. The day was very hectic. I just took a quick shower, put some clothes on together, and here I am. I don't usually go out dressed like this, but I'm so happy I'm here. And I wasn't going to get up and speak, but one of the people who spoke tonight, especially maybe 4 people before me, go to the food pantry. I literally, and when I'm saying I almost got sick, I don't mean sarcastically, literally almost got sick. Just because someone doesn't have the education, the qualification to make a good living, doesn't make these people any less to throw them, or go get them at the food pantry. So I got up. This is not about competition, about making the bottom line. It's not about being profitable. It's also about having morals about other people. And I'm the type, now, not before, lately the past few years, I cry just about anything that I see unfair. I don't need, I am retired, I make good money, I was in a leadership position, so I'm not speaking because, but nothing, if someone who makes $7 an hour could get utilities, food, comparable to the money they make, I says, okay, but that's not the case. The water bill is the same as someone who makes $1 million a year. The electric bill is the same. I don't mean the same, I mean the rate. I don't mean that. All the cost of the food is the same. Okay, maybe they don't buy organic food, but even the least expensive is expensive. So they cannot cut corners. Where do they cut? But now even the school lunches are going to get cut, perhaps. So if they cannot get good food at home, the children, because the parents are not making enough money, they can even get lunches. So the thing is, okay, if things are not going well in a company, many people here have their own companies, or they're manager, they're presidents of a company, how would they feel if they say, well, we're going to have to cut your salary? Maybe from $150,000, we give you $125,000. I don't think they would like it. And yet we expect the minimum pay to be kept at a low rate. Also, these people are the people who make also your company. They make your company. Don't worry about the competition. Someone before me said, make Northbrook the town that you want, all the other towns to watch. And you know what? You get the best help. Northbrook pays well. That's where I want to go. And they will work to make your company successful. When you're making a million money, saying, I'm doing as little as possible. And that's it. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
So I'll ask you to
Thank you. Can you sign in, please? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Rosner, and I also want you not to do anything today and not to opt out, just to keep it as it is. I was here a couple weeks ago at the board meeting, and after I spoke, a man got up from Acme Manufacturing, and he spoke, and he said what a great company he had. And he invited anybody to come to his company and to look at it. And Irv Levitt, who's from the Tribune, went to his company and looked at it. And he wrote an article about it in the Tribune. And he talked about a man who worked at Acme. And this man, I remember when the owner came, he said how well paid he paid everybody. But it turned out he paid people at 3 different levels. And one was the lowest level at $10 an hour. And this man had a family. And he had to work at Acme, and then he worked another second job to just make ends meet. And his wife had to work also. And they lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Chicago. They paid $800 in rent because that's what they could afford. And his son had to live in the living room on a bed. That's where he slept. And that's what we are doing to our workers when we are looking at them and making them live at this kind of salary. And that's why I'm asking you to let the minimum wage rise and to let the Cook County Board ordinance go into effect. And again, we have to let that ordinance stay as it is. We have a handful of businesses who have come here today and said not to do that. But we have thousands of businesses in Northbrook and 700 businesses the Chamber claims that they have. But not very many have come here and objected today. We have the Y that said, oh, well, we don't know if we can pay this. And I saw in an article that they had in the newspaper that they paid just a few people $8.25, but everyone else was paid a much higher salary at the Y. So I think that we can afford to give people a living wage, and it's time that Northbrook stood up and said, we are going to do this for our citizens. And our citizens in Northbrook, what do we make? What do we make? We make $118,000. That's what we live off of, our household income. And the family income in Northbrook is $143,000. And I, for one, I want to say, I am one person who does go to Sunset and who does go to Ace Hardware. I visit our community and I shop there. And I just want to ask at the end that you guys do nothing and let it stand as it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Chicknell. I've been a resident for 15 years. My wife has been a resident her whole life. This is the first time I've ever come to one of these meetings. And I've listened to what everyone said here, and, you know, for me, it's really an issue of what's right and what's wrong. And I feel like when I go into the voting booth and I vote on, you know, it's really not voting on it, right, but the referendum comes up and you vote for raising the minimum wage. The reason why I vote for that and the reason why 70% of the Northbrook residents voted for that is because I believe they think that that's what's right. That's the right way to be. And to say that these other communities are doing something wrong, right, and so let's follow them and do something wrong also. That's no reason to justify doing something different than what we as a community believe is the right thing to do. And I think also for me, it's an issue of fairness. And I hear a lot of business owners come up here and say, well, it's not a level playing field. It's not fair, right? But look at society and look at what we pay, as a minimum wage. And is that even a living wage? Is that fair to the people in our community? Is that fair to society? And I'd rather be fair to the people in the community and fair to society than fair to businesses. That's the way I feel, and that's why I voted how I voted, and that's why I'm here saying I support raising the minimum wage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ted Smuckler. I am not a resident of Northbrook. I live in Skokie. I work for Open Communities, which covers 19 suburban communities. We do fair housing work and organizing work. I hear that 20 villages and maybe some more have opted out. First of all, I don't like the language opt-out. Opt-out sounds, very sterile. What it means is actually taking wages that people were promised, taking paid sick days that people were promised away from them. I live in Skokie, and I'm proud to live in Skokie, that they're not considering this. Neither is Lincolnwood or Evanston. I don't believe Winnetka or Wilmette is considering this. So there are many communities that aren't. The reason this was passed on a county level is clear. This is not going to pass on a state level. It's not, and it's not going to pass on a federal level. It's fine. I would love it. I think we would all love it if the state raised the minimum wage. But I could guarantee the Chamber of Commerce, if that were going to happen, would fight against the state raising the minimum wage. There are studies, there is empirical evidence that businesses do not fall apart when municipalities raise the wage. There's a study in your packets from the National Employment Law Project that shows that businesses thrived after minimum wages were raised, and that's because of morale, people having more spending money, and people wanting to work and staying at work. I told my daughter before the county ordinance, when minimum wage was going up in Chicago, go find a job in Chicago. The work is more valued there. I think people would come to Northbrook, won't come to Northbrook if the minimum wage was only $8.25. The one other thing that sounds really disingenuous is every employer, every business saying they pay well beyond the minimum wage. This is a question of level playing field. If they're paying well beyond the minimum wage, how is this affecting them? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Kohler. I live at 1019 Adelaide Drive, and I prepared some remarks. One of the most challenging parts about government these days is the undue influence of corporations over public policy. Those of us who watch the dysfunction in Washington and at the state level often wonder how to get the individual citizen a seat back at the table, especially as we hear news every day, including today, about social support systems that are getting withdrawn at the federal and state levels. It's a particularly bad time to be a low-wage earner in our country. As a result of this concern, a group of concerned citizens rallied together as the Working Families Coalition to defend the rights of Northbrook workers to ensure that these ordinances are not lost to businesses' desires. You have before you a petition signed by almost 250 Northbrook residences and letters from 75 residents who wrote in to the trustees to express their support. In addition, you have many gathered in this audience who care deeply about the decision you're about to make. We, along with the several organizations who support workers' rights, have supplied you with sound research and perspectives from other cities, counties, and states across the country, which indicate there is little to no impact to businesses from an increase in minimum wage to a livable wage. Indeed, research has shown that businesses continued to flourish under an increased minimum wage, regardless of whether they were close to a border. We also presented you with research that indicates that the earned sick leave is not just a humane policy, but sound public health policy. According to the CDC, 49% of people who work in the food industry have reported to work sick because they can't afford to lose a day's pay, including those who suffer from vomiting or diarrhea. Especially those who work in the food or healthcare or childcare industries shouldn't be forced to decide between working while vomiting and earning enough money for food or rent. And these workers are not just those who live elsewhere. While this may surprise many residents, some of these near or below poverty workers actually live here in Northbrook. Census data reveals that approximately 3,500 Northbrook residents earn less than $25,000 per year, and of those, just over 1,500 earn less than $15,000. Elementary school free lunch programs indicate between 2 and 24% of students qualify for free lunches, and at GBN that number is around 7%. Recently, the food pantry shared with us that 202 people from Northbrook are so food insecure that they are fed from their stores. This is all within our own borders.
Can you start wrapping up, please?
Sure. We implore you to right-size the handful of business concerns with actual evidence of results and the overwhelming support of your constituency. We elected you to do the right thing, not the easy thing. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Catherine Caparuso, and I've lived in Northbrook for 10 years. I'd like to continue what Michelle said. Understandably, to a certain extent, a handful of businesses have written in opposition, although I'm also confused by the idea that there are people who are already well within the ordinance. It wouldn't change their business in any way, being opposed to the ordinance anyway. That doesn't make any logical sense to me. The data is very clear, despite the stories about speculation about businesses moving from the area, that when these ordinances have actually been put into practice, even in state or local governments, that it has little to no impact on the businesses in the area. The real question is whether the Northbrook business community as a whole can absorb this, and if Northbrook will remain a vibrant business community with these ordinances. According to the research that I just cited, and we cited in the packets that were made available to you, even in neighboring Chicago, the answer is a resounding yes. Does this mean some businesses may choose to leave or go out of business? I suppose it's possible, but we will not know all the reasons for doing so. What we do know is when this is in effect, it does not overall have that impact on business. Remember that minimum wage and labor laws are nothing new, but the minimum wage has fallen far, far behind inflation. For many years now, there's been a shift of focus from government from caring about citizens to caring about businesses. Don't carry this tradition down to Northbrook and let our community's members continue to suffer as a result of this race to the bottom. Instead, lead like communities such as Evanston, Wilmette, LaGrange, and Winnetka. I have several elders in my family that I take care of, not through, thankfully yet, hiring any senior care services, but I certainly would much prefer to hire a company who provides sick leave to its employees. I would not want to hire a company that does not provide that and could supply a worker to take care of my mother or grandmother who has to choose between going to work sick and keeping her job. That is not the kind of community that I thought that I lived in, and I ask you to let the ordinance remain in effect in Northbrook. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jim Kahn. I'm a longtime resident. I've served on the Economic Development Committee for many years, but I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here as an individual speaking for myself. Annually, I speak to the leadership program of the Northbrook Chamber, and I talk about, among other things, I characterize economic incentives as a necessary evil to overcome a prior public policy initiative enacted with laudable intentions, but causing adverse unintended consequences. You've heard about the 6 Bs tonight, the need to overcome those things. You've all seen window signs touting lower retail sales taxes, all on the north side of Lake Hook Road. gas stations on the south side of Lake Creek Road close. Please don't condemn Northbrook businesses to one more competitive disadvantage. Don't endorse the county board's fatal conceit that their judgment is superior to that of independent employers voluntarily coming together with willing employees. I encourage the board to opt out of the Cook County minimum wage requirements, as others have done. It's your responsibility to allow Northbrook businesses to compete fairly in our regional marketplace. Raising the minimum wage will not reduce income inequality despite good intentions. Nations with the most generous minimum wage laws have the highest rates of unemployment. Switzerland, with no minimum wage law, has about the lowest. Don't consider the intent of policy, consider its real effects. When the minimum wage went into effect in 1938, Puerto Rico lost 120,000 jobs. The unemployment rate soared to about 50%. American Samoa, during the Obama administration, petitioned to get out of the higher increases because their job market was being torched. The African-American mayor of Baltimore in February vetoed a minimum wage increase, saying the bill threatened jobs. San Francisco has been losing restaurants. California Governor Jerry Brown, signing a statewide minimum wage increase last year, characterized it as a moral imperative that economically may not make sense. Failing to opt out of this Cook County requirement endorses a policy that economically may not make sense. Why can't developing countries attain prosperity by raising the minimum wage? Poverty is not so much a result of being underpaid as being underproductive. Employers will not hire workers who produce less than the cost of hiring them. Milton Friedman termed the minimum wage a monument to the power of superficial thinking, noting that the government notwithstanding, the real minimum wage is always zero.
Jim, can you wrap up, please?
The amount an unemployed person receives from a non-existent employer. In 1987, the New York Times had an editorial, the right minimum wage is zero, explaining why. Now, they flip-flop, but the laws of supply and demand have not been repealed.
Can you please wrap up?
Please don't consider the intent of the policy, consider its effect. Employers won't hire or retain workers who produce less than they cost. Employers are in a better position to assess the economic value of an employee than the county. Minimum wages bar low-skilled workers from the bottom rung of the ladder of economic opportunity, destroying job and career possibilities.
Thank you. Jim, thank you.
My name is Heather Ross. I've been a resident of Northbrook for almost 14 years, and I have a business, I have a law firm located in Northbrook as well. And frankly, when I heard that Northbrook was considering opting out of the minimum wage ordinance, I was shocked, really disappointed, and that's why I'm here today. Before I had my private practice, I was a poverty lawyer, and I spent many years representing families working for minimum wage, all of whom are under the poverty line and still would be considered that. And so I saw firsthand hundreds of clients every month calling me because they could barely keep food on the table. They had to choose between sending their 6-year-old to school with 103 and strep throat or losing their job and becoming evicted from their home. The minimum wage right now results in about $15,000 a year for a person. I would guess to say that many of us here in Northbrook spend about that much on our children's travel sports activities. And it's horrifying to me that I could live in a community that would consider opting out of, a wage ordinance that certainly doesn't even come to a livable wage, but comes a bit closer. And finally, one thing that I don't think has been mentioned yet is that in Cook County, of those people who are earning minimum wage, over 80% are families supporting their families, people with children. So I strongly hope that you will not opt out of this ordinance, and in fact, I'd be embarrassed to continue my business in a village that would opt out of the minimum wage ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Nancy Goodman. I'm a 28-year resident of Northbrook. To me, a lot of what I've heard tonight about this, people who want to opt out, is another reflection of the sad state of our country and the politics of fear, and that the fear that businesses will fail, the fear that businesses will move, that there'll be less profit. To me, those kind of fears just reflect an attitude of what about me, what about me, what about me? And when you have that kind of attitude, someone lower on the ladder of life is going to be suffering. I would rather Northbrook would choose not to opt out and would spend some of the money that's going to be collected from giving away the public sidewalk and make a big banner on, billboards on every entrance to town that says, we've done the right thing, we pay our workers well, welcome to Northbrook, we care about our community. To me, this is a moral question. It rises above a business question. And in that sense, I'd like to read to you a prayer that comes from the Mishkan Tefillah, a Reformed Jewish prayer book. We read this prayer every Friday night. I'm just reading a portion of it, but it speaks to me every day, and I hope it will speak to you also. We worship the power that unites the universe, a promise of harmony for all, yet that oneness eludes our grasp as imperfection and evil abound. Before our eyes there is a vision of perfection, order, and goodness. There is evil enough to break the heart, and there is good enough to exalt the soul. When will redemption come? When we grant everyone what we claim for ourselves.
Thank you. Nancy, can you sign in, please?
Good evening. My name is David Orr. I'm the Cook County Clerk. I thank you for letting me testify tonight. I'd like to frame the issue first in a little different way. The vote tonight, if it comes tonight, is basically to take away two crucial benefits to low-income Northbrook residents. Secondly, the voters have spoken a number of times. Now, why is that important? Everyone's proven that by 70% margins. You've got people here going to be one side or the other. You've heard business on both sides. We have one side, they have another side. Okay? The only thing you've got which shows what the vast majority of Northbrook residents believe are in these referendum. And as politicians, you know, you get a 55% vote. That's a landslide. And we're talking about 70%. So that's why this referendum reference is important. The voters have said what they believe. We're here because some business interests believe this could cause them a problem. And I have great respect for business, and I assume all those business people are decent. But one of the ironies brought out several times tonight, both businesses encourage you not to change this ordinance, is that many of them already pay more than the minimum wage, because as good business people, they know that's what they need to do. Also, the state is not going to raise the minimum wage. Okay? We shouldn't think about it. It's just not going to happen in the foreseeable future. Also, other places around the country, in response to some speakers, local ones, have raised the minimum wage and are very successful in raising that minimum wage. And to the gentleman testified more recently, the only thing that has raised wages in this country in the last 20-some years is the recent increases in the minimum wage. The key way that most business leaders are successful, and at least the ones I've known over kind of a long career, is because they value their workers and they understand, of course, they should have sick time, and of course, we should pay them enough. These are the people that are serving my customers, okay? And if you're running a business, you also know you want those people to stay. You want the good people to stay and perhaps the less good to leave. Paying them decently, you want to keep them. So there is a strong argument for good businesses understanding why a very low minimum wage increase will actually help business. As to the Warren Buffett comment, and I believe the Warren Buffett comment had to do with take care of your business, take care of your family. Knowing Warren Buffett and what he stands for, I suggest what Warren Buffett would say is make your business work well enough so you can take care of all the families. We're not here to take care of ourselves and let all these other people in the many thousands who live in Northbrook continue to live in very, very serious situations. And all I can say to you is if you have the wisdom not to be influenced by some wonderful people, but they represent a very small minority of Northbrook, if you have the wisdom not to opt out, I guarantee you I will come up here. I love to shop in Northbrook. I like your theater, like your restaurant. I guarantee I'll keep coming up here no matter what you raise minimum wage to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Lee Goodman. It's a pleasure to be back with you this evening. On any number of occasions, you've refused or declined to do things that we've asked you to do for the benefit of the people in this town. And your usual rationale or excuse, depending on how you want to look at it, is because it's not your job, because the state should do that, or the county should do that, or the federal government should do that. And well, okay, but I sometimes wonder, what do you say once you've gone through those doors after the meeting? I don't know. Have you ever wondered what we say to each other when we go out those doors at the end of the meeting? I want to tell you what happens usually. What happens is we go out there and people turn to me and they say, what is it with those people on your city council? Are they really so cold-hearted? Are they really so self-centered that they don't care about anyone else's business and real estate developers, all that they care about? Are they that limited in their imagination? And I want you to know, I always defend you. I always say, not necessarily. They may just all be Republicans. But you make it difficult for me because what you're saying of your philosophy of limited role of government, that's a very limited part of the Republican philosophy, and it's sort of an outmoded view, and it really doesn't give credit to modern Republican thinking. On the other hand, if you go to Washington and you ask them why don't they do anything, they say, oh, well, that's something that the lower levels of government should do. So Republicans are pretty good at saying it's the other guy's job. Well, the problem I have here is what you're saying is we don't, if you pass this opt-out, you're saying we're going to grab the power that we don't have to even touch. The county has already passed this ordinance. You could very well, to be consistent with what you seem to think is your philosophy, you could very well say, look, that doesn't have to be our job. We don't have to do it. A higher level government has already done this. If you go and vote for the opt-out, what you're saying is we want to be the activists. We want to be the people who grab every bit of power we can. And I don't know what I'll tell people then the next time if we walk out here. When they turn to me and they say, is your city council really just all full of Republicans? What am I going to say? No, they're just a bunch of cold-hearted, mean-spirited people with no imaginations.
Lee, can you sign in, please?
It's a tough act to follow. My name is Chris Gornberg. I'm a 25-year Northbrook resident, and I would like to ask the board to opt out of the current ordinances as they are standing as of today. I'm not against minimum wage. I actually worked at Walgreens when I was a student at U of I, and I earned $3.25 an hour, and I certainly could not have supported a family on that, and I had some extra beer money, but I'm not against minimum wage. But there's 3 reasons why I think that we should opt out. Number 1 is I am a member of the chamber, and I speak with Cywoods Hensley and my other members of the chamber. We had discussed this at several meetings, and it was pretty much a unanimous decision to write the letter to the board. So that's my first reason. The second reason is that I'm also a business owner. I'm an attorney in Northbrook, and I lease space from Harley over there. And if his costs go up, then my costs go up. I mean, right now, Cook County has really high real estate taxes. And many lawyers I know work in Deerfield. They cook in Kingston Road. So my lease is up in a year, and I may just decide to go look in Lake County for another place to hang out my shingle. I don't really want to. I love my space, but that's an issue for me and my firm. And lastly, I got this idea from my neighbor Sandra, who was telling me about what about the Y in these non-for-profits that are in Northbrook, and I think it's an issue for them. The Y, I guess they don't have to pay their camp counselors, this new minimum wage, but there's other employees. There's also the J and the Montessori school. So For those reasons, I'd like you to opt out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm back. My name is Barbara Binder, and I have a question to ask you first before I say what I want to say. Is the people that opt out or don't opt out, is that a matter of public record?
I don't understand the question. If we
Businesses that want to opt out, is that a matter of public record?
It's not a business by business. It's a community by community.
Okay. We built our house in 1967. That's 50 years ago. It was a 5-bedroom house on a half-acre lot for $42,500. Okay. I've seen Northbrook change and grow over the last 50 years and become an extremely affluent society. $10 is really not even a living wage. For someone not to be able to take care of a sick family member or to come to work because they are sick, because they can't take off and get paid, therefore giving us health, concerns, is not the way to go. And I think the majority of residents in Northbrook have not wanted to opt out, have wanted to go with the minimum wage, have wanted to go with the sick leave. And I have to be very honest with you, as a resident of Northbrook and knowing many people in Northbrook, I would prefer not to do business with a company that wanted to opt out. I'd rather give my money to a company that's willing to give their workers a somewhat measly living wage and health benefits. And just for those who were concerned about the health care industry for seniors, I'm a senior, I'm 73, I know a lot of people in their 70s and 80s. This is not going to affect them. They can afford the difference. So I really urge you not to opt out and to grant the minimum wage and the sick leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jay Stewart. I'm with the Cook County Bureau of Economic Development, and I'm here tonight on behalf of County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. Earlier, I distributed a letter to the clerk that you all have from the president, and I'd just like to read it into the record. Economic development has been a priority for my administration since I took office in 2010. I'm committed to financial health across the board for all of Cook County and our residents. That goal requires a strong and healthy workforce. Last year, our County Board of Commissioners approved 2 ordinances aimed at building that workforce. One gradually raises the minimum wage in the county to $13 per hour by the year 2020. The other allows employees to earn paid sick leave commensurate with the number of hours they work. I was pleased to support both measures and thank the commissioners who brought them to the board. Sustainable growth requires growth at every level of the economy. A healthy workforce benefits all of us, yet a recent study of health food workers showed that nearly 90% of them went to work when they were sick. That defies common sense and is not good public policy. And when people have more money in their pocket, they spend more. Local businesses benefit from this increased spending. A number of municipalities are passing ordinances in opposition to ours. By doing so, they are essentially denying benefits that have been awarded to our residents by the county board. Paying people fairly and allowing them a limited number of earned sick time supports economic growth. These actions complement investments made by the public and private sectors to grow our economy. Under my administration, Cook County has worked hard to support economic development through such mechanisms as tax incentives and transportation investments. We collaborate with local leaders in these matters. Regrettably, the spirit of cooperation is lacking with the minimum wage and earned sick leave ordinances. That is most disappointing. I'm committed to increasing economic growth, opportunity, stability, and prosperity fairly and equitably for all of Cook County. This requires fairness and, above all, common sense. Obviously, we would hope that the village does nothing and does not opt out and allows the minimum wage ordinance and paid sick leave ordinance stand. In closing, on behalf of President Preckwinkle, I want to thank all the residents of Northbrook who spoke in support of the minimum wage ordinance and sick leave ordinance, and I hope that the village board hears their voices when they vote on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mike Kreloff, and I'm a newbie. I'm just 2 years here, although 25 years in Northfield, so I feel very welcomed. I wanted to talk about one issue, the level playing field issue, because hopefully, except There are probably a few exceptions. Most people would like to see a higher minimum wage. There's a fear about unfairness, disparity. I want to tell you, it's not an issue that's in front of you. You can't do anything about that. When we tried to raise the minimum wage in Illinois, the chamber said, what about Indiana? What about Iowa? You know, we can't do it there. Chicago has done it. Most of the suburbs are going to be staying in and will do it. So when people are up here saying we want a level playing field, what they're really saying is we like the advantage. We can pay less than than employers in Chicago. We can pay less than employers in Skokie. I get it. We all get it. I would like the chamber, I would like all of us to go up to Lake County and say, do the right thing in Lake County too. That's not happening. We have a chance to do something here today. We can't apply fairness across the state of Illinois. I wish we could. But we can do our small bit to stick with Cook County, to stick with the president, to stick with the board. And believe me, if anything, if it doesn't go the right way, the board will be back. The county board still has an awful lot of influence, and ordinances can be passed and they can be repassed. And this is something that you have to deal with. You cannot create this level playing field. You just have to decide. The only option you have is to decide what's the right thing to do, what's not the right thing to do, and be equal with Chicago, be equal with Skokie, be equal with Wilmette, and all the other places that are not trying to opt out. And that, I think, is the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Ben Head. I'm here to read a statement on behalf of Congresswoman James Schakowsky. Without realistic prospects of either a federal or state increase in the minimum wage in the near future, I am writing to strongly urge the Northbrook Village Board not to opt out of the Cook County ordinance that increases the minimum wage and provides for earned sick days. The cost of living in the Chicago area far exceeds that of downstate Illinois. The Cook County Board showed courage and progressive thinking when it acted to have Cook County wages and benefits keep up with those in Chicago. Minimum wage is intended to set the floor of the labor market, but not lock workers into a life of poverty. In Illinois, it was last raised to $8.25 an hour in 2011. In 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King decried the federal minimum wage of $1.60 as a poverty wage. In today's dollars, that would be worth $11.40. Northbrook is a vibrant community where people care about each other. Northbrook residents also care about the workers who bag their groceries or wash their dishes at their favorite restaurant. 68% of Northbrook voters supported a higher minimum, or about 70 supported a higher minimum wage in 2014, and close to 75 in 2016. Imagine trying to support yourself and a family today on $8.25 an hour. If you worked full-time, that would get you about $17,000 a year. Which would you leave unpaid? The rent, the groceries, shoes for your kids, child care, transportation costs to get to your job? What happens to you if you or your child get sick and you have to lose a day's pay or perhaps get fired if you take that time off? I understand that some employers in Northbrook have a hard time finding low-wage workers. That's no surprise given the low wages. For example, there are not enough professional caregivers for the disabled community. With a starting salary of about $8.35 an hour and an average wage of $9.35 an hour, there is a more than 60% turnover after 6 months in this field. I sometimes hear that raising the minimum wage would drive small business to shut their doors. But Small Business Majority's recent national survey shows that 60% of small business owners supported raising the national minimum wage to $12 by 2020. Does raising the minimum wage hurt economies in municipalities and counties that have neighboring communities with a lower minimum wage? The evidence says no. The added cost to businesses are more than offset by the lower turnover, improved morale and productivity, and increased spending in the community. So finally, the question before the Board of Trustees is simple. Do you want to allow workers to earn the increased wages and benefits that they are scheduled to receive as of July 1st? Or do you want to echo some communities that apparently believe it is okay to keep the minimum wage frozen at $8.25 and not allow workers or their loved ones to get sick without losing pay, losing their jobs, or coming to work sick and infecting their coworkers and customers? Ladies and gentlemen of the board, which side are you on?
Thank you. I thought you had a board meeting tonight.
I did. This is my second meeting tonight, and so
My voice is tired. I'm going to keep my remarks short, in part because I'm so touched by all of the friends and neighbors who've spoken already tonight. My name's Tracy Katzmall. I live at 234 Powderhorn Drive in Northbrook. Before that, I lived at 2667 Lisa. I've been a Northbrook resident since I was 3 years old. When I listen to the workers talk and when I listen to the businesses talk, I see this in the lens of priorities. I know that everybody on this board of trustees cares for and feels deeply about the workers because, almost to a T, you've talked to me individually and said this. I know that you feel this issue as we feel this issue. And I know that the business owners who are here tonight, and I thank them for being here tonight rather than just behind the scenes, also feel for this issue and that they're worried. But we can't make a decision tonight based on worry. We have to make a decision based on facts and data. We have to think about the 3,500 Northbrook residents who are living at a poverty wage. We have to think about the thousands of those who commute into Northbrook for their jobs who are also living at this wage level and who will be stripped of the raises they would otherwise receive on July 1st. We have to look at and focus on the research. Just days old from the University of California at Berkeley Institute for Research on Labor and Economic Employment, which I provided in the packet, which shows unequivocally that in the years since Chicago raised wages, there has been no cost in lost jobs to the city. None. The businesses there have not fled. They have not taken away their jobs. They have not relocated to Indiana. Those jobs remain vibrant in the city, and they'll remain vibrant here too. We've heard some discussion tonight of the market and of the relationship between employers and employees. And in some cases, those do function beautifully. But we have to understand the history of labor law in this country and understand that the purpose and intent of the minimum wage law from the start, decades ago, was to level the playing field and for the voters and the citizens of this country to decide that there is a bare minimum at which we will allow our workers to work. And how we can say that that bare minimum should be anything less than a living wage for an individual is hard to comprehend. I want to take 1 second to comment on whether this is a red issue, a blue issue, a purple issue, or just a human issue. I grew up in a household where my first memory of politics are my mom and dad debating whether Reagan or Carter is the right choice for an election. And yet both of them wrote it on the record tonight, and both of them tonight are at a business conference for a business that's been located in Northbrook since I was a grade schooler, and which does pay its workers generous wages. This is an issue that comes from prioritizing, and it comes from the heart. And I want to ask you tonight to understand with your head and with your heart that businesses have worries and fears, but data tells us where this needs to go. It's been 6 years that our workers have waited. We can't ask them to wait any longer with no data to support that decision. Please stand with your voters. Stand with the 400 residents who of our own accord have gotten educated to write a petition, to be here tonight, the 75 plus who've emailed with you. Do the right thing, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Randy Ka. I'm a 7-year Northbrook resident. I'd like to echo a lot of the sentiments you've heard. I think this has to be a moral question, and I don't think we can wait for the state or the country to lead. Northbrook has to lead. We all know that $8.25, $10 an hour, that's the minimum wage is not a livable wage. To the employers who are already providing well above that, thank you. Good for you. This should not affect you. I'd also like to echo that, not having sick leave can become a public health issue when the employees who prepare our food or take care of our children or our seniors can't afford to take off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Megan Kavarkas. I was not planning on speaking tonight, but my lovely husband is home with our 2-year-old and 9-month-old twins, and he texted and requested that I share opinions for both of us. My husband has been a Northbrook resident for 16 years. I've been a resident for 3. And I would say I've heard people talk about kind of the shoppers in Northbrook. I would say I am your typical Northbrook shopper. I am a mom. I'm invested in our community. There's probably very few people who like a good deal better than myself. That being said, there are things that I value more than a good deal. One is my community. I shop locally. I love being invested in our town. And secondly is my time. If something is cheaper in the next town over, I still like to be close to home. Additionally, I've heard people say that moving businesses is a possibility for them. Moving businesses is a very expensive proposition. Additionally, I've heard about competition. If some of those businesses, unfortunately, cannot take this hit, there are other businesses that will be able to do that, and they will be able to thrive. And lastly, I've heard people mention kind of Democrats and Republicans, and people talk about red and blue America. I live in a red and blue household, and I will tell you that both my husband and I both came out in November, and we both voted to increase the minimum wage. And that is something that we feel very passionately about, along with 75% of the other Northbrook residences. And lastly, just speaking from the heart, I will say it was kind of a hard sell for me to continue to stay in Northbrook, and my husband kind of espoused all the virtues of Northbrook over and over and over again. And now we are teaching our 2-year-old where we live. And he very proudly says he lives in Northbrook, Illinois. And I am proud that he lives in Northbrook, Illinois. And I would like to continue to remain proud of my community. And so I'm asking you to kindly not opt out of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rachel Zinberg. I'm a resident of Northbrook for 14 years. I would like to urge you to not opt out of the ordinance. I can't imagine trying to raise a family in Northbrook on $17,000 a year. Could I raise a family anywhere in Chicago on $17,000 a year? To pay for rent, heat, food, electricity, clothes, child care costs, and school supplies? I don't think so. I can't imagine it. $17,000 is the annual salary for a minimum wage worker. This ordinance will raise that number to only $20,000. The idea that your vote tonight could be actively taking money out of the pockets of these workers turns my stomach. I agree that it would be better if the state of Illinois acted, but clearly it won't. It's a disgrace to me that an affluent community like Northbrook is considering taking what is essentially a small amount of money from the pockets of the working poor, because that is what these hardworking people are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Greg Panic. I've got a business here in Northbrook, Panic Precision, with my son. I'll just take a minute, and I'll let him take a minute if we could. We're a manufacturer. We're an automotive manufacturer. And our competition, unlike everybody else here in business, is not next door. Our competition's in India, it's in China, it's in Mexico, it's in Japan. We're competing with these third world countries at very low cost, and we do compete. And we can't afford to have these minimum wages start at $10. And what keeps me awake at night more than that is the personal time off. We have 170 employees, 160 machines. And 170 employees would equal about 850 personal days off. And I can imagine the day after Super Bowl when 60 people don't show up because it's my personal time off. We do give sick days. Our employees do get sick. They get their time off. But for us to give them 5 days unlimited time like that would be a horror story for us. So I would really hope that you would understand this and vote against this. Brian?
Thank you.
Hi, Brian Panic with Panic Precision, also a Northbrook resident. I understand this is an emotional topic for everyone, but I'll do my best to remain objective and factual in what I present to you. Our company had previously expressed our opinion to the board back in January, and I'll quickly restate just a couple of those talking points for why we are requesting that Northbrook opt out of the ordinance. The first is philosophical in the sense that wage and sick leave policies should only be dictated by the federal government and the state government levels. There are only so many layers of regulation and compliance we can continue to manage on a daily basis, and to add county and local regulations to the mix only adds more complexity and uncertainty to our business planning. Is it really in the best interest of the business community to create multiple pockets of key business rules within just a few miles of town and county lines? We don't believe so, and decisions with regard to minimum wage and sick leave should remain at the state level. The second talking point is the overall short-term business cost both the minimum wage and sick leave policies would represent to not only our business but Northbrook businesses. While our business planning includes estimates for labor increases year over year, the ordinance far exceeds any estimates that we could ever budget for. No company can plan for what amounts to a 20%, then 10%, then 9%, and finally 8% increase in labor over the next 4 years. From a dollar perspective, the first year alone would cost our company $500,000 in unplanned costs. That's not $5,000, that's not $50,000, that's $500,000. After hearing this number, I asked the board, what would you do as a key decision maker of a company who's responsible for making objective business decisions and doing, quote unquote, the best for the most? We cannot be expected to just accept or absorb these numbers without taking action as a company. As a manufacturer in the global market, primarily serving automotive, there's no such thing as passing on costs to our customers. Our quoted price is the long-term price, and price decreases are expected year over year. When we quote, we're expected to quote decreases year over year. Any attempt to increase leads to resourcing to other competitors, both foreign and domestic. Our foreign competitors are in fact heavily subsidized by their governments in order to steal business from U.S. companies. This is a fact. To summarize, we have been in business over 70 years, 32 in Northbrook employ. My father said 170. It's actually 180 people. We pay fair wages, provide paid time off up to 15 days plus the opportunity to earn 2 additional days off. We have 401k, Blue Cross insurance, which incidentally continues to rise. Our goal is for all of our employees to continue to improve their skills and progress further in their professional and personal lives. However, this ordinance would have a serious effect on all business decisions for companies in Northbrook. In the long run, will only hurt those it is trying to help as automation and robotics become more cost effective and other counties and states provide better business options with reasonable commutes. Again, we urge the board to opt out of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Saperstein. I'm a Northbrook resident. I live around the corner from here with my husband and 2 daughters who go to Greenbrier School right across the street. I'm speaking tonight to urge you not to opt out of the minimum wage ordinance and the earned sick time ordinance passed by Cook County. For the sake of many of the workers in the Northbrook community who are too afraid to speak up, we need to support them and their right to earn a decent wage and to be treated right. These are the people who check us out at the cash registers every day. These are the people who help us find the products we're looking for on the shelves. These are the people we say hi to and know by name. And these are the people who are going home to their families every night and who they are trying to support. We talk about how we want the people who work in our community to be able to live in our community, but the current minimum wage level is roughly 60% of the living wage for an individual in Cook County. 60% of what one person needs to live in the area, when in fact 82% of the workers earning these wages are over 21 and supporting families. Do we want to recruit the best people to work in Northbrook? Yes. Do we want the people who are serving us food and working in our stores to be healthy? Yes. Do we want to be able to look them in the eye and say, you deserve our respect? Absolutely. Opting out of the minimum wage ordinance and the earned sick time ordinance is basically saying that Northbrook doesn't care enough to give our workers a decent wage and a healthy work environment. That is not the town I know and love. Please make the right choice. It's better for our workers, and it's better for Northbrook. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Gloria
Can you pull it
Castaneda.
down towards you? Thank you.
Okay. My name is Gloria Castaneda, and I am a member of Arise Chicago, and I work for 23 years in a car parts factory, and almost for 10 years I never received a raise, almost a decade without an increase. My rent went up, the car cost went up, the food. This made it hard for me to support my family. I have to look for other work to supplement income. So, well, this is my story, and I represent hundreds of other workers in Northbrook who, like me, maybe rarely or never receive a raise without recurring increases in legal minimum wage. In my job in Northbrook, I also didn't have real access to paid sick days. We could use 2 emergency days per year, but we use more than that. As any working man, We know the kids don't play. When they're going to be sick, maybe could be more than 2 days a year. Working moms like me should not be punished for staying home with a sick child. Other Northbrook working parents like me need these policies. We need a higher wage, and we need access to paid sick days to take care of our children or parents. Or as I ask that Village of Northbrook listen to the needs of this community and its workers. We make your economic function. Keep these basic human rights, this basic workplace protection in Northbrook. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you sign?
Good evening. I'm Reverend C.J. Hawking. I'm a United Methodist pastor, and I'm also the executive director of Arise Chicago, which is an interfaith group that helped to pass the Earned Sick Time Ordinance at the city level and then the county level. A couple points of clarification. Glenview has not voted to opt out. That was an advisory roll call that they took the other evening. They have not opted out. Also, Morton Grove last night decided to table the issue, even though they came in ready to vote on it. We say here tonight that 20 communities have thought about opting out or have opted out. That leaves 116 who are going to allow these workers' rights to come forward. I want to thank Gloria, who spoke before me. It took a lot of courage for her to come here, and her former employer is in this room, and yet she stood before you and said that she did not have a raise for 10 years, and she never had a sick day during her time with that employer. Soon in this room, we are going to enter into a moment. I ask each of you to not make the motion, to opt out. And should one of you decide to make that motion to opt out, I then ask each of you remaining to not second that motion. Do not take the rights away from these workers. We are about to enter a moment. And as there was a lovely prayer offered from the Jewish tradition, I would also like to lift up Hebrew scripture when we enter that moment. And it is, "Search me, O God, and know my heart." Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bruce Frankel. I've been in Northbrook for 23 years. I think this is a moral issue. I think the people in this town are doing very well. We can well afford to pay a little extra to see our workers make a little bit more. And I know that people are coming in from, working from Wheeling and all sorts of areas around the area who come and work for Northbrook businesses. But they deserve to make a decent living, and we're not paying people a decent living. I have study after study in my folder here that when we lift the minimum wage, it is beneficial to the community because people have more money in their pockets. They'll spend more in town. They'll spend more in the area. People at minimum wage spend almost everything they have, and they spend it locally. So it lifts all boats. And another thing, I protested against the Walmart that was going to come in. And the comment I made to the guys from Walmart is, we don't need low-wage jobs. We don't need another 300 low-wage jobs. We need good-paying jobs, living-wage jobs. And you go over to Sunset Foods on a weekend, it looks like a Mercedes-Benz dealership exploded in the parking lot. There's so many wealthy people in this town, and these businesses are saying, Oh, it'll affect our business. They're all millionaires, half of them. A couple of the guys that were up here, the guy's got a fleet of Rolls Royces I see every day because my office is right across the street from the guy. These aren't people who are worried about losing their jobs. They just want to make more and more and more money off the backs of low-wage workers. It has nothing to do with, going out of town or something. And it's probably more the property taxes that are driving businesses out of Northbrook than anything else. I talked to real estate agents. Lake County has lower property taxes for businesses. Businesses are going there because they're paying lower property taxes. Does not have to do anything with the wages. They're making plenty of money. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Jennifer Lawrence, actually, and I own Juniper Boutique, which is in downtown Northbrook. And I am not a millionaire, nor is my partner, and nor do we make $1 million a year. I come up here at great peril, potentially, to my business, and I just want to note that you have seen a lot of people get up here and say those things, but it is not necessarily going to affect their bottom line. And a lot of businesses have come up, but I think you're absent a lot of businesses and possibly the smaller businesses, and those who are more out in the public eye, that are fearsome to come and stand up here and tell you how they truly feel about this, because they're afraid of the backlash that might happen to their sales. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I chose to come up and stand up here to tell you that while I philosophically do agree in a minimum wage, there are implications to a business, and especially a small business. And often when a minimum wage is proposed, there are tax credits given to small businesses just in order to help them through. We have very little wiggle room in many of our things, and a salary is the hugest component of our budgets. It is the only place we would really have to make any kind of significant cuts to. We have inability to raise our prices because we have customers who will stand at the counter and look on Amazon to see if it costs as much, and if they're willing to wait, they may buy it there. And we are competing against other area boutiques that have the same price. There is a manufactured suggested retail price. Our only way to cut is to cut up. To stay in business will be to cut operating costs. We pay over minimum wage for many of our employees. We pay at minimum or over, but not as over as the proposal for our high school students. We enjoy having the high schoolers as part of our business. They have an opportunity to take, to build a basis, to say that they have a job, to show up. By the way, their number one reason for not showing up is because they're sick. And we enjoy having them there. Their jobs and their roles are not to support a family. Their jobs and their roles are to fold clothes, to steam clothes. It is not something that we would be willing to pay $15 for. So we will potentially not have that aspect in our business anymore. We'll have to take on those jobs ourselves, which is going to take us away from growing our business and spending time doing things that will help to continue to grow the business. So we are at risk, and I just wanted to be able to come up here and let the whole community know that you have to look at it. It's not just the big business person who is making tons of money and running around in a Rolls Royce.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dick Murphy. I live on Cedar Lane. I've lived here in the Highlands for 37 years, and I am speaking to urge you to reject the efforts to roll back a small step towards a living wage. The remarks I have are not as eloquent as some of the other people who stood up here before, just an occasional comment about this, that, or the other. I thought that the ordinance did not apply to people 18 years old and under, so high school students wouldn't be impacted by that, and a business that employed or relied upon high school students wouldn't be affected in that way. I noticed that in some of the documents that were put online, David Schoon listed all the suburbs that opted out, and he didn't list the suburbs that had opted in or chose not to opt I think it would be interesting to know, for me, the list of all the ones who are staying strong. I would say that the letter from the Industrial and Commercial Development Commission that listed reasons to oppose the wage hike included a couple of arguments that at a minimum were unpersuasive and perhaps even callous, that this would be an administrative burden. And I think of the people who are making $16,500 a year, they've got a lot of burdens that they're carrying every day that make the administrative burdens, I think, pale in comparison. The idea that the market, rather than Cook County, should determine the wages, I think if the market was allowed, as other speakers have said, to determine how things went, there would be no minimum wage, maybe no child labor laws, etc. Arguments by those opposed to the wage increases tend to focus on their future expenses and how they would increase. Consideration ought to be given to all the money that's been saved and all the profits that have been earned over the last 30 years, as the minimum wage has been so rarely and so slowly increased. The objection that the increase is too large and too sudden for businesses to be able to deal with could be seen in light of it being the result of the depression of the wages that have occurred over the last several decades. Another argument, those opposed to the wage increase, is that it would require businesses to raise the wages for all of its employees, the spillover. There hasn't been any quantitative proof of that shown, and where would those other employees go if they did not get a raise? To Lake County, where the wage level is lower? I don't think so. There's no place for them to go. Thank you very much.
Could you please sign in, sir? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Laughlin. I'm a Northbrook resident and a Northbrook business owner. I own the Christopher Laughlin School of Music. We provide one-on-one music lessons to the community, and so essentially I'm in the business of selling time. I have about 16 part-time employees, and if the paid sick leave ordinance is allowed to stand in Northbrook, I would stand to lose personal income way out of proportion with the benefit that the employees would be receiving. As the ordinance stands, the employees would receive paid sick leave in proportion about 2.5% of their hours worked, which would mean, in effect, that if my employees took 2.5% of their annual hours as sick leave, my revenues would go down by the same amount, 2.5%, because if they don't work, then I can't sell their time, and I can't sell, those lessons will be lost forever. They're not, it's not possible to make them up. So if my revenue were to go down 2.5%, that would affect me to a far greater proportion of that amount, because as anybody who owns a small business knows, a small business owner pays himself last. After all the fixed costs are realized, then you get what's left over. And so in my case, and it's probably similar for a lot of small business owners, my profit margin is roughly 20% of my total revenue. So 2.5% of that translates to 12.5% of my personal income. And so I'm not here to whine, but you know, I own a very small business, and I'm a very middle-class earner. And so for my income to take that big a hit, it would be difficult to overcome. So I speak hesitantly. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I didn't particularly appreciate an earlier speaker who disparaged the motives of some of the business owners who have addressed you this evening. And it's also difficult for me because I see around me so many of my customers who've spoken so eloquently on the other side of this issue, and I really respect their point of view, and I have no quarrel with the increased minimum wage. I believe that workers do deserve a living wage, but I would like you to consider the effect that this ordinance would have on business owners such as myself as you consider how to act this evening. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Liz Dutton, and I own Juniper Boutique with a very famous Jennifer Lawrence. Forgive me, I'm very nervous for several reasons tonight. I didn't intend on speaking. Just a few things that I thought were worth noting. I am also not a millionaire. And in terms of our high school students that Jennifer referenced, a lot of our high schoolers would, after this starts affecting them at the age of 18, we would unfortunately and cruelly and prematurely have to give them a taste of the real world and lay them off, essentially, because riveting boxes and folding T-shirts is not worth $15 an hour for us. A lot of the young girls that work for us are so sweet, and they love clothes and fashion. They want to have something to be involved in when maybe soccer is over. Their parents want them to have another responsibility, and they're part of our family. We love having these girls. They are a huge part of what makes Juniper Juniper. A few years ago, when my husband and I got married, I worked for Jen, and we had the option to buy a house or buy a store. And I worked at Juniper, and I loved Juniper. And what I loved about Juniper was Northbrook. I love our customers. They are family to us, too. I'm talking, we lend you your shoes for a party. Like, we feel for everybody in the community, we work with them. We love them personally. We know their kids. That's what made me want to say, you know what, let's keep renting this crummy condo. And in Northfield, by the way, not Northbrook. You know what, I really want to invest in this business because I care for it so much, and I see the way Northbrook has been so supportive of a small business like ours. And when I say small, I'm talking less than 10 people. I've lost my train of thought, but one last thing I did, like I said, I didn't intend on speaking, and Jen and I debated right up until the moment she stood up, and myself, because we've been so fearful. We see customers here that we don't want to lose, not just because money. We don't make that kind of money. But we just would hate for someone to think that it's because we were being greedy. We really do like this community a lot. And we're nervous about losing customers for voicing our opinions. I know there are other small businesses who are like-minded, and they're not here, and they might not speak, and I feel for them also. So I encourage you to please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Howdy. I'm glad I'm last because it's going to be quick and to the point. My name is Ron Bernardi, and I'm Vice Chair and Board Member of the Y here in Northbrook, and I'm here on behalf of the Y. The Y is a nonprofit organization. Most people don't realize that. We give out $500,000 in scholarships every year. 1 out of 6 people at the Y get some kind of scholarship for after-school care, a summer camp especially, and an array of programs. I was thinking about this, and maybe the big question for the trustees and the village board, the big questions, because there's a lot of little questions and answers, is the big question is about control. And I just thought of 2 things, and I think you have to ponder, and who do you want making decisions for our community, Village of Northbrook or Cook County? And secondly, do we want Cook County deciding what is best for our community's future? And this is just one mandate of what will continue, down the road. And for the Y, this would have a devastating, huge effect on the economic impact of the Y. I think you received some information and you saw what it would mean. So the Y, in closing, is our position, the board of the Y, is to join with the Chamber of Commerce and many other small businesses, which you've heard this evening, and other social agencies to urge the board of directors to opt out of the minimum wage and the part-time sick leave. Thank you very much, and I'm going to bed now.
Ron, could you sign in? Thank you.
My name is Patty Vile. I'm an 8-year resident of Northbrook, and I take exception to what the former speaker said, because if you listen to Northbrook, Northbrook has overwhelmingly endorsed raising the minimum wage and staying with Cook County. And I want to tell you that in Northbrook, 3,400 families live off less than $25,000 a year, and of this, 1,500 families earn less than $15,000 a year. The household median in Northbrook is $118,000 a year. Denying workers higher minimum wage robs their family of $3,640 just the first year. In subsequent years, the workers will lose an additional $2,080. Over 200,000 workers in Cook County will benefit from this being included in this raise, and I hope we could include those in Northbrook. Thank you.
President Froome, it's now 10:30.
Yes.
I would ask if we could take a 5-minute break.
Yes, I am going to declare a 5-minute recess. When we return, the village board will deliberate. The public is welcome to stay and observe, but there will be no further public comment. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. your seats. Trustee Cecila.
Trustee, yes, here I am. President Froome, again, we have two ordinances for consideration, one with respect to minimum wage, the other with respect to paid sick leave. I think what I'd like to do is get comments from the individual trustees first, and then have the board determine where it wants to go, if anywhere. Trustee Kirianis, you are up.
Okay, thank you. Well, this has been a very difficult evening, and it's a difficult evening because of calling to question the moral issue. And I've been thinking about this, and I've met with some of the people before the meeting individually. I talked to some of the businesses individually. And it's a difficult question, and I'll tell you why. I remember when the referendum came by, non-binding referendum, how would you vote? And I'll tell you how I voted. I think that the minimum wage is too low, and I think people deserve sick leave. So I voted that way on that referendum. However, I didn't realize that that referendum would result in this particular ordinance. What troubles me about this ordinance is that if you were asking me, can we go to $10 now, right now, vote on it right now, and let's see how that goes, and let's go from there, I'd vote in an instant to raise the minimum wage. It's too low. It's truly too low. But when you raise it to 10, and then you raise it to 11 in a year, and 12 the next year, and 13 the next year, and then by essentially a cost of living every year thereafter, I question the wisdom of that ordinance, because I fear that that will promote a tremendous move either towards automation or cutting those jobs entirely. It definitely hurts the small businesses. I don't ascribe to the fact that businesses don't move. I know for a fact they do. They do, and they have. Not only that, when people go to locate businesses in Northbrook, as I did at one time, and made the decision not to locate the business that I represented at that time at Northbrook because its costs were too high, its rents were too high, its taxes were too high, didn't even get to the wage section. We never even considered Northbrook. The companies that thrive in Northbrook are the ones that have strong margins. And I will tell you that the individual entrepreneur that owns those companies is an easier person to deal with generally than the national companies that are run by boards that do not live in Northbrook. Because the individual entrepreneur has a heart, he gets close to his employees, he cares, and he does compensate them generally. Not everybody, of course not, but generally. The people that represent, that are presidents of companies that are nationally owned or publicly held, just report to the stockholders who are not local, and all they care about is profits, and unfortunately all they care about is short-term profits. There aren't strong strategic plans in place. So having said all that, I struggle with this because I care about these people, and I certainly don't think it's a living wage, and I would call into question, I haven't had a chance to do this, but you know, what was the precept of the minimum wage when it was first instituted, and whenever it was instituted? When was that, the 30s? 38? I don't know what a minimum wage was supposed to do. Was it supposed to be a living wage where you're supposed to support a family, or was it supposed to be a beginning starting point? I look at businesses like that lady that said, I'm a very small business, it'll affect me strongly. I look at situations such as the YMCA. I look at situations of companies that are privately held companies that are competing globally. And that bothers me because I don't think that passing this minimum wage will result in more employment. I think it will result ultimately in less employment. And that scares me. As far as the situation with the earned sick leave, if you read it, it says, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that you have to work 80 hours in 120 days. Well, that's 2 weeks out of 3 months, isn't it? 4 months. Well, is that I'm not sure of an employee that works that little, and I don't know if that's the threshold. So there's so many questions about the way this ordinance is written that troubles me that I don't know that I can support it.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Bueller.
Thank you. First of all, thank you all for coming tonight. I learned a lot from listening to you from both sides of it. I think everyone was very well spoken on their positions, and it's always important to keep learning up here. And you listen and you try to balance out what the better good is for the village and how this works in a representative democracy. I think that the biggest problem with the minimum wage as the county has passed it is it's only Cook County. It is not Lake County. It is not any of the other collar counties. It is only Cook County. This, in spite of what Representative Morrison said, the state has a responsibility in this, not a single county. The referendum, as it was described, if you go back and reread it, it says, shall there be a minimum wage in Illinois, not in one of 102 counties. This only deals with one of 102 counties. I do find it's interesting, though, that at the same time that Cook County enacted this, Cook County is also adding their dollar tax on soft drinks that will go into effect on the same day. So you would think that if they were interested in this, they'd find some way to try to accommodate that so they're not requiring a higher wage at the same time they're requiring a higher tax be paid. I thought that was a little interesting. This is creating an uneven playing field with Lake County, with the small businesses. Again, not the businesses that may have only, just 100 and 150 or so people. We're even talking about the ones that have 5, 6, 7, 8 people, the small businesses in town. One thing we look at a lot is people say, why can't you do something and get more businesses into the downtown? Why can't you get some small businesses in there? We're trying to create an environment that is good to have people bring their small businesses here, to try to bring additional boutiques, additional stores. I see no way that the Cook County ordinance would help promote that. So I believe that what we should do tonight, when we get around to it, is to enact the ordinance that opts us out of the Cook County, both of the Cook County ordinances.
Thank you. Trustee Israel.
I agree with my fellow trustees in that I think this places an undue burden on our local businesses. I understand that this is believed to be a moral imperative. I've read through everything that has come before us. My problem is not in paying people a minimum a living wage. As a business operator, our minimum wages for our interns are above this. My problem is the way that the mandate comes through. And the way that the mandate comes through, it does place us in an unfair situation. It places one of our hallowed institutions, several of our hallowed institutions of the YMCA specifically, at risk. It places a number of our very quiet small businesses, some of whom I've spoken with on the side, at risk. And the sick leave is, as far as I can tell, very difficult to deal with, unbelievably difficult to deal with and enact as a business operator. I understand the moral imperative that everyone is speaking about, and I don't see any problem as a business operator in paying my people a wage that is fair for the work they do. I started out a long time ago working as a dishwasher in the Dragon Inn on the south side for very little money, and all I was doing was trying to get a job and get my feet in, and worked my way up through that. I don't think that minimum wage was ever intended to be a living wage. It is a stepping stone onto things that are farther. I appreciate all your views. I just can't buy into them. Thank you.
Trustee Collison.
I'm going to start with sick time because I don't want to opt out of the sick time ordinance. I strongly believe, and I ask my fellow trustees to consider, especially given what Trustee Israel just said, my business itself is a small business. We're on LaSalle. We're affected by this. And when it came to the sick time, yes, we had to create, and we're working on a new spreadsheet. Took about 10 minutes. But I really do believe that every person should have a right, every worker, to take their child to the doctor if they're sick. And as a working mother, I just can't in good conscience essentially take that away. So if it's not vacation time like some of the speakers talked about, it's not let's call in sick after the Super Bowl. It's if the employee is ill or injured, if a member of their family is ill or injured, if there's a domestic violence situation, a sexual violence situation, a stalking situation. And I know that many of our businesses here have sick time policies, and maybe they call them something else, and maybe they're going to have to just rename it or rework it a little. But I really believe that it's not asking too much and it's not too burdensome for our employers to provide their employees with sick time, earned sick time. Now, on the other ordinance, the wage, I was one of the 70.5% voters that actually voted to support a higher minimum wage, and I do support that. And I can say I don't buy when the speakers come up and they say, well, they would have supported it anyway, not if if the question didn't say for the whole state, because I'm one of the ones that, given the information I have now, I absolutely would not have said yes. It was a question that is not before us today. And, you know, anyone who lives in Northbrook, if you remember when the Park District sent out a survey, hey, you want a new community center? I was like, sure, yeah. Okay, but then when you find out the information about the cost and the data and the details come out, everyone was like, no way, we don't want that. I mean, and that's the exact same thing that is this question. It's not what's before us. I really struggled with this ordinance. I believe that I am a progressive thinker on a lot of things, and I do think that workers should have a higher wage. There's no question in my mind. In fact, my business, like I said, is affected by this, and I can relate to Juniper. I mean, I have a small business, and I have law clerks lining up out the door for $10 an hour, and they don't want anything except for experience for their resume. I have to train them. I constantly have at least 2 or 3 of them in my firm that I employ. And because my business is on LaSalle and in Cook County, this is something that's going to affect, you know, my bottom line, but I'm glad to do it. I'm still going to hire the same amount of people, and I'm happy to pay the higher wage and the sick time, and I'm comfortable doing this because all of my colleagues who also run personal injury firms and who have law clerks, we're all held to the same standard. No one's disadvantaged. We're all going to be paying the same thing. So there is not an uneven playing field. And the problem is not really the higher wage for me. The problem is the ordinance itself and the implementation. And as I read through the ordinance, of course, as an attorney, I had like 6 different highlighters highlighting all of my different issues with it. For starters, the exclusions, I love that. We're just going to have this ordinance, but it doesn't include us. And then the amount of increase per year, the age limitation of 18. A lot of older high schoolers are 18. That includes a whole section of workers that come home for college and want summer jobs. People who aren't looking to support themselves or support their families. I mean, I worked at a garden center in Northbrook all throughout college, and I fear that those jobs would not be available, certainly not at $13 an hour. So what I did was I got one of these maps of all the counties, and I started sitting down with my blue pen, and when I started shading in the villages and towns that have already opted out or given a very strong indication, such as Glenview, that they will be opting out, Northbrook began to look like an island. This is Northbrook. This is all opting out, and all up here is going to be opting out. And it's not really an island that I would want to visit as a business person. And a lot of the comments, people are saying, it's $10, it's $10. Well, it's not $10. I'm looking down the road, I'm looking 3 years from now, and then we're at a higher minimum wage by almost $5 than pretty much everyone that touches us. And that's Wheeling, that's Deerfield, that's Palatine, Buffalo Grove, Highland Park, Des Plaines, Glenview, Mount Prospect, Schaumburg, Hoffman Estates, and a dozen more. I mean, that is going to absolutely make a difference for our businesses. $5 an hour more for a minimum wage, it's not a small cost to absorb. It's not a question of morals. It's a lot of money, and it is going to affect businesses coming, businesses staying, and we have to protect our tax base, especially with the looming cuts from the state. It would be irresponsible for me to vote any other way than to opt out of the minimum wage ordinance. And it kills me because I literally read every letter, all the data, everything that was sent to me. I've talked to so many people in this room. I've met them in person. I've met business owners. I literally have not done my real job in like 3 weeks. And it doesn't mean that I don't care about our workers. It doesn't mean that all those villages in blue don't care about their workers either. It just means that we're basically given this ordinance, and I even asked, can we modify it? No. Can we adopt part of it? No. It's take it or leave it. So we're given this ordinance that's basically shoved at us that we weren't a part of creating. We're not able to change, and it's literally hogtied us, given our location and given everything I just said. So it breaks my heart, but there's no way that I can, in good conscience, not opt out of the minimum wage.
Thank you, Trustee Collison. Trustee Hahn.
I think a lot of what my fellow trustees have already said are right. That the sentiment that the small businesses here that work hard here in Northbrook, they contribute so much to our community. They volunteer their time. They donate to charities like Rotary, and they support the Y. They're good corporate citizens for the most part. And I would also say that I've done some research on my own. I took Matt Lovejoy's invitation to visit Acme Alliance and check out the foundry. It's a business that his dad started. Spoke with Jim Kinnett, his right-hand man, who I believe is here tonight. And I also spoke with an economics professor. There was a bit of a debate on whether wage laws are macro or microeconomics, and I also think that that this won't benefit. I think there are several hundred people that are working minimum wage jobs that actually live here in Northbrook. I can believe that. I'm sure they're suffering in the shadows. Many of them probably don't even realize that this is going on tonight, that this debate is going on tonight that affects them. But I believe the vast majority of people that this would benefit are workers that don't live here in Northbrook. That said, a lot of you know that I'm a lawyer, but before I became a lawyer, I was a photojournalist for the Sun-Times. And my first couple of years, I covered the North Shore. And then my last couple of years, I covered the south side and south suburbs, and I covered communities like Blue Island and Morgan Park, Glenwood, and I got to know these workers. I know that many of them commute from the south side, from the west side, from hour and a half away just to come here and work. And many of them are single moms. We have an epidemic in this country of single moms working not just one full-time job, but 2 full-time jobs. And while they are the ones who would directly benefit, I want to emphasize the adjective directly benefit, we would also indirectly benefit by not taking away their rights. We do pay a cost when these workers, when these single moms, when these 80% of workers who these laws would affect, when they can't take time off to take care of their kids, when they don't have enough free time to take their kids to organize activities like we do. Those costs include increased violence, crime. Many of them are evicted from their homes because they just can't survive. And we pay those costs. So I just came back today from Washington, D.C. I flew in at 6 p.m. and came over here as soon as I could. And before I left D.C., I happened to walk past the Supreme Court, and emblazoned on the top of the roof of the Supreme Court are the words, "Equal justice under law." And we know that the first words, well, one of the first words of the Declaration of Independence are that all men are created equal. I would, of course, include women. And I wonder, by taking away the rights of the people who are in a democratic system, Cook County, and I know people don't like Cook County here, many people don't, but it is a system that, just like the system, people, it's democracy. And I just know that I can't look at my Creator in the eye at the end of the day and know that I took away those rights to ease suffering. So because of that, I will not be voting in favor of taking away the rights of the workers.
Okay, so I'll speak, and then President Froome, and then we'll see if somebody wants to make a motion. So I was touched today by Rabbi Sid, and I don't know your last name. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. But, okay, so you came up and spoke, and one of the things that you said is, our heart is telling us something. And that really touched me. Somebody else came up and said, don't make the easy decision. And I just want to say to you, I don't know if you know or you noticed, Mr. Goodman thinks that we make easy decisions. It's not the case. We're all struggling with this. Most of us have sat down with folks on both sides of the aisle, literally, and really heard you out. And many of the things I've considered is the impact these two ordinances would have on Northbrook for our residents, our businesses, and our workers. Some of the strongest factors to me are things that haven't necessarily been touched on here. One of the things that happened early on in the meeting is the committee assignments. And I was, again, appointed to Administration and Finance. And one of the things that we continue to focus on is what's happening in Springfield and the threats to our revenues from Springfield in the form of cuts to the distributive fund, a potential property tax freeze. Locally, we look at losing revenues in sales tax to Internet purchases. So, to Trustee Collison's point, when you look at 3-4 years down the road, businesses coming in and examining Northbrook as a potential to stay or to come in, and you've got a minimum wage that's $5 an hour more than everybody around us,
You've got a property tax differential between Cook and Lake counties that's so significant that Northbrook will be, I'm afraid, Northbrook will be a place where businesses won't come. Today, as we sit here, we have 45,000 people that enter our community every day to work and to shop. That's in addition to the 33,000 residents we have. And I feel that number would be significantly decreased and jeopardized, and our revenues would be decreased and jeopardized by allowing this ordinance to proceed. Now, that being said, I'm a liberal, and I'm a proud liberal. So, Tracy, sign me up. Tell me where to write the check. Tell me where to hold one of those signs, and I'll go with you. I'll go with you to Springfield. I'll do it. Whoever is here for Jan Schakowsky, hey, Jan, let's do something in Washington. Let's raise the federal minimum wage. Let's deal with the folks in Springfield because that's where it should be. Again, and with respect to Northbrook, with respect to our community, at this point, we do pay $10 an hour. But what I'd like the board to consent to doing this evening is, as part of our annual budget review, when we do the budget, when we prepare the budget, I'd like us to examine every single year the starting wage for our summer workers, with whom this is who it would apply to make certain that our wage is a competitive, reasonable wage, and let's look at that in line with the Cook County ordinance. I'd like to do that on an annual basis for us as employers of the village. Okay, and Sandy.
I, too, would like to thank everyone who has come out on both sides of the issue. I think that I have read every single one of the emails and the letters that were sent. I think I responded to every single one of them, including the ones that we got up until 5 o'clock today. I also have reached out to the businesses in the community, those that many of whom are here, others who are not here, and asked them as well how this will impact them. I don't think that there's any decision that we make here that we take lightly. I said before I walked in today that in the years that I've been on the board, this is probably the most difficult decision that I've had to face. We've had a lot of difficult decisions on this board, and I don't think that any one of us hasn't tried to make the right decision for our community. I think AC alluded to the fact that we're not a direct democracy. This country is not. We're representatives. We have to represent the whole community and represent those people, not only those people who have showed up, who have written us letters, but those we've reached out to and that we listen to as we go about our daily business. Saying that, I hope you all accept whatever decision's made. I don't know where we're going to end up tonight, and I will, at this point, ask for a motion and see where we proceed from here.
I would ask, it sounds like it's not going to be the same vote on both, so
I'd
let's
take them separately.
Right. So, Debbie, the first one is ordinance number
20.
Okay.
Ordinance number 1720. I'd ask for a motion.
Well, which one is it?
It's, excuse me, the regarding the minimum wage.
Minimum wage.
I would ask for a motion.
So moved.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second.
To be clear, what you're voting on is a motion to amend the municipal code, which would put Northbrook in conflict with the Cook County ordinance and essentially opt out of the Cook County ordinance on minimum wage.
Correct. Is there anyone that would like to make a further comment on the board?
I would like to add just one thing. In my remarks, I neglected to say that in addition to changing the minimum wage, when you look at it in isolation like this, it doesn't just affect the workers that are at minimum wage. when you raise a minimum wage up to
scale.
$13 an hour, you then look at the next level up, which are the group leaders, which are currently making $13 an hour. So you're going to have to adjust those wages all the way up the ladder, and to look at the cost, just the cost associated with the people at minimum wage is also an error.
Thank you. Is there anything further? Roll call, please.
Trustee Karianis.
Yes.
Trustee Bueller.
Aye.
Trustee Ciesla.
Aye.
Trustee Israel.
Yes.
Trustee Collison.
Yes.
Trustee Hahn.
Nay.
President Vroom.
Yes, a motion passes.
President Froome, up next is ordinance number 1721.
We're having a meeting. Let's keep it in order. Thank you. 1721 is an ordinance to opt out of regarding paid sick leave. Is there a motion to put this on the table?
So moved.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion and a second. Any further comments from any trustee? Roll call?
Trustee Karianis.
Yes.
Trustee Bueller.
Aye.
Trustee Ciesla.
Aye.
Trustee Israel.
Yes.
Trustee Collison.
No.
Trustee Hahn.
Nay.
President Vroom.
Yes, motion passes. Okay.
There's nothing further on administration and
Thank you.
finance.
Public Works,
Nothing tonight.
Communications and Legislation?
Was that me?
Tonight,
I
yes.
have nothing tonight. Nothing tonight.
Okay, Community Sustainability? Nothing? Okay, any remarks for the good of the order?
No.
No. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Stand adjourned.